Yo, what's up? Welcome to PS I Love You XOXO episode 94. I'm one of your hosts, Blessing Adeoye Jr. Joining me is Gameonesis, aka Janet Garcia.
Yo, what's good?
Not much, Janet. How's it going?
It's going all right. I'm excited. We're recording at a different time, so I had more time to sort of gear up for this. That being said, I also just wasted the bulk of my day doing close to nothing. But now I'm here and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, we're recording at a rare 3 p.m. time, which usually when we record around noon. And I'm coming fresh off of KindaFunny Games Daily, so I still have the hosting energy up. I'm still like I'm feeling still like social. I got like the hosting lubricant going, right? Like
I hate so much of that.
Yeah, I said what I said, and I'm ready to hop in fresh. But now I've had like time to settle after KFGD, and like usually I'm not hosting shit around 3 p.m. And so I've kind of like I'm in a chill mood. I'm laid back. Like I'm coming back from a nap right now, and so like I don't know, I'm laid back, but I'm excited because we got a lot of good stuff to talk about.
You've had the weekend to kind of get away from your major loss on Friday, which
I'm still feeling. I'm still reeling from, if I'm being honest. Of course, Barrett Courtney running the ones and twos. He's referring to the infamous Mario Party stream, the fight for CEO, which let's say how it is. I was robbed.
I knew something went wrong with that for you.
You were Mario
Party. When you tweeted out, when Blessing tweeted out, I think society has evolved past Mario Party. I'm like, this is the take of a man who just took an L. Yeah. So then I had to, of course, dig in further.
Again, this is what I said on the stream, is that the second that you start expecting things from Mario Party, Bless, is the second that you stop playing the game and you start playing yourself, which is exactly what you did.
I feel like that's what I told you last night when you were talking about, or I think it was Andy or somebody that
the
was
meme is
like,
very good.
Barrett's training up. Oh, Barrett has brought up a meme of me when I tweeted last week that I'm channeling my inner Game Over Greggy energy for the next couple of days of content. Prepare yourselves. And then I did not foresee that would end in me giving the same facial expression of me defeated with my hand face palming essentially.
Yeah.
Another really good one, which Ryan in the live chat pointed out. Best quote from the Shame stream. Welcome to the Blushing Show, where we break down.
God, I've never, and I know this is a PlayStation podcast, so we're not going to talk too much about Mario Party, but I've never turned on a game like this to where Mario Party historically, I've always had a great time with.
It's so
I've always
good.
loved Mario Party. Mario Party historically has not taken too much from me. Friday, it took so much from me where I was riding such a high. It was me. It was Snowbike Michael, aka Snowbike Mike, aka Snowbike Microphone, aka Snowbike My Chemical Romance. It was me and him.
That's a good
right?
one.
We were in it together. Thank you. That was off the top of the dome. I really had to pull from that one. And I was ahead by the end of the game by like a good margin, right? I was ahead a strong 2 stars. And Mario Party did the thing that Mario Party does, which is it gave out bonus stars toward the end of the match. And like
it gave Tim enough to tie with Blessing star-wise, but since Tim had more coins, he got the second place instead of Blessing.
But why do we allow that to happen?
I mean, here's the fun thing, Blessing, is that Tim decided to leave that in, because in Mario Party Superstars, you can turn that off. You can turn off the bonus stuff for the end, but Tim decided that needs to be a factor in deciding who the new CEO of KindaFunny is, because again, reminder, Greg is gone, raising this kid, so we need a new leader to lead us for CEO. And so that'll be decided this Saturday without Blessing on Extra Life, since Blessing got knocked out in the first round. It'll be up against Snowbike Mike, who's I think the villain of this story so far, Tim, who is playing for Joey, Nick, who I don't think is actually going to be able to make that specific time slot for Extra Life. So I think Joey might be playing for Nick, which might get confusing and really fun and really dumb. And myself. So we'll come together and we'll decide who the new CEO is.
Like I said, society has moved past the need for Mario Party, even though I am having a good time with that game. It's a pretty good Mario Party game. It's one of the best Mario Party games, probably. But what I will say is that where the fuck is PlayStation Party?
I was just about to mention that. Like, what would that look like? I mean, would you want it to be exactly the same, where it's just like, yeah, I get, right? That would be fun. I feel like that's so good because you're already in that game. There's already a lot of visceral creative. Like, Blessing, how much of that game have you played, and did you play with someone else or by yourself?
Sackboy Big Adventure?
Yeah, that one.
I beat it by myself.
Okay, damn, that's kind of sad.
I mean, it's a fun single player game. It's a really good game, even single player.
It is, but I've been having a lot of fun doing that with my family, and
to clarify too, they didn't add online to that game until like a month later, and I played that game at launch, if you remember. And so I probably would have played that game with friends if I could connect online, but I didn't have anybody I wasn't going to sit down with Michael Hyam to play through Sackboy Big Adventure. He had other things that he was working on.
If it's not Final Fantasy 14, Michael Hyam ain't playing it.
Yeah, then he ain't playing it.
That's the one he plays, right?
Maybe you could dress some of them up as someone from Final Fantasy 14. But yeah, like that game already has a bit of bitterness infused in it, just with the scoring system where they do like rank you at the end and you can like hit each other and photobomb. Like it has a lot of that same energy as Mario Party, which also has a minigame where you can hit people for taking a photo, like to try to like get into the frame. So I think that is a really good call.
Yeah. No, I'd be totally down for a Sackboy Party. I think another one would be Astrobot. I think Astrobot would be fitting. Or maybe that's the way you do it. It is in the way that you have Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. You have Sackboy and Astrobot at the party. At the club, Sackboy and Astronaut throw an extravaganza, and you go about it that way. Yeah, these are free ideas. PlayStation, go ahead and take them. They're all yours. I want to play that game when it comes out, hopefully in 2023. But for now, Janet, let's talk about 2021, because remember, this is PS I Love You XOXO, your PlayStation podcast. Each and every week, we join you to talk about the biggest topics in PlayStation. If you like that, you can watch it live right here as we record on patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, or you can watch it Tuesday when it posts for everyone on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames, roosterteeth.com, and on podcast services around the globe. Remember, you can use Epic creator code KindaFunny on all Epic Store and Epic in-game purchases like Rocket League and Fortnite to help support the channel. Housekeeping for you, over the weekend, the final episode of the Arkham Files went up. That is Barrett's breakdown of the Arkham series. This final episode is all about Arkham Knight. That's up right now for your viewing pleasure on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames. Barrett, what is one reason people should check that out?
The Arkham Knight one is all about why I think Arkham Knight has the best story in the series, which I quickly learned was a very unpopular opinion from the comments. But even seeing those, I still stand by it, and I feel like I give a fair breakdown of the game overall, giving some shit towards like the PC launch, right, and like the Batmobile. I feel like I gave a measured breakdown of, and talking about like what the story does best and why I think people focus on the wrong aspects of the story, because I think what the game was actually trying to do, I think it does very well. And of course, that's the final episode of the Arkham Files, so you can check out all 4 episodes over on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames, all in a playlist. All 4 episodes are in a playlist, so you can watch them back to back if you so wish. So check them out.
Hell yeah!
I talk
awesome.
about
that's
what
like if you watch them back to back, that's basically a 40-minute Barrett extravaganza right there.
Exactly, and that's why people were like, "Oh man, I wish this was an Assassin's Creed in review where it's like a 2-hour thing of him talking about this series." And it's like, well, you're still getting like 40 minutes of it. So there you go. Yeah, I for each video I talk about what the game does best in aspect to fear. So Arkham Asylum is all about designing fear. Arkham City is about becoming fear. Arkham Origins is about discovering fear, and Arkham Knight is all about facing your fears. So check it out.
Oh yeah. So go check that video out. Face Barrett's video. And yeah, like Barrett, congratulations, by the way. Great job on that. Like I'm very proud of you and Roger for putting that together. I know Roger on the editing side, getting one episode of the Blessing Show is a lot of work by itself. So doing that back to back weekly, I know is a challenge, and you guys totally dominated it. And so good job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to our Patreon producers, Pranksy, Tyler Ross, Delaney Twinning, Julian the Gluten-Free Gamer, Alex J. Sandoval, James Hastings, and Casey Andrew. Today we're brought to you by Upstart, but we'll tell you about that later. For now, let's start with topic of the show. Janet, last week we talked about our predictions, hopes, and dreams for the PlayStation State of Play. We are over the hill. We've experienced that PlayStation State of Play. We're going to talk about that PlayStation State of Play for a topic of the show, because I think there's a lot to talk about. Of course, we can do the simple thing, which is recap it, which we're going to do. We're going to recap it for a second. But what I really want to talk about is PlayStation State of Play as a whole, right? I want to talk about the previous one that we just got, but I want to talk about the concept of State of Play, because one of the things we talked about last week was about expectation and what we should look forward to in terms of what a State of Play is. And I think even with how this State of Play landed, going on Twitter and seeing the reactions, people are kind of all over the place. Mostly negative, I'd probably say, out of this last state of play, but I want to talk about it. Firstly, I do want to recap what we got to catch people up who might have missed the state of play. So going down the list, I'm pulling directly from the PlayStation blog with this. We got Death First, Let It Die. That is a multiplayer survival action game built around a reality game show in which you'll fight it out for fame, glory, and fortune. It looks like a melee battle royale. Reminds me a little bit of Hunter's Arena Legends. I always get that name mixed up because it's a very generic game, even though the game is pretty a very generic name, even though the game is pretty decent. And that was a PS Plus title a few months ago. But this is one that takes place in the Let It Die universe, which is very interesting. And this is coming from Gung Ho and Super Trick, which, if you remember the original Let It Die game, which I liked quite a bit, that is one that was worked on by Grasshopper Manufacturer, who with Suda 51 and who's done things like No More Heroes and other stuff like that. It seems like they're not going to be on this new Let It Die game. Instead, it is going to be solely Gung Ho and Super Trick, which is made up of folks who were on Grasshopper Manufacturer. It's a whole ordeal. That's coming out spring 2022 on PS4 and PS5. We also got We Are OFK. The description reads as an indie pop band, OFK teams up with the co-designer of Hyper Light Drifter for a new 5-episode music biopic series. That's coming in 2022. We got Bugsnax, The Isle of Big Snacks. That is free DLC for Bugsnax. That's coming in 2022. They just announced that they're adding trophies to that game because of an unnamed fan. So congratulations to that unnamed fan for getting those trophies greenlit.
A real pillar in the community.
A real pillar in the PlayStation community.
If only we knew who they were, but it's one of
If there was a way we could know who that unnamed fan was. You hate to see it. We got Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. That got another trailer that's coming out in December. Death's Door was announced for PlayStation. That's coming to PS4 and PS5 on November 23rd. And pre-orders for that one get Titan Souls for free, which Titan Souls is one that I love as well. And so you should definitely hop on that. Kart Rider Drift is coming in 2022 to PS4. King of Fighters 15 got a new fighter announced. There was First Class Trouble, which is a social deception game, which usually is my type of shit, even though this one looked, I don't know, man. This one didn't.
Okay. I think it actually looked decent. To me, it kind of gave me personally, it gave me some Operation Tango vibes with the working together, sort of not, a little bit Among Us-y with the betrayal element, ? And then just from the general design and what it seems to be asking you to do, it kind of gives me a little bit of Hitman energy. Now, that's not to say it's going to be as good as any of those 3 games, because those are some pretty strong titles. But I feel cautiously optimistic of this. And I like this one as, to me, a classic PS Plus moment, where it's would I play this if it wasn't on PS Plus? Probably not. But could it maybe be secretly good? Yes. And it was out on early access via Steam, because I was looking into this a bit. And on Steam, the overall, I think reviews are mixed. So it's a little bit but the recent ones are positive. So that kind of tells me that maybe they had a rocky start in their early access window, and then maybe they've been iterating and improving, and maybe the build is currently more sort of up to par for people. But again, that's very speculative just based on that additional, look I did into what this is.
Yeah. And I'm looking into it now because in my notes I have it that it launches into PlayStation Plus next month. This is written last week, and so this launches into PS Plus as of the time we're recording tomorrow. As of the time you're listening to this, right now it's available. And this is one that I'm down to check out. And Janet, say the word. Me, you, Snow White Mike can play this on stream, because I think Mike wants to check this one out with me for a little bit. And so maybe we check this out. Maybe it's actually pretty fun.
And again, as you learned from last week, don't trust Mike.
I trust Mike. Mike has been good to me. He's been good to me. But yeah, that's coming out on PS Plus, which again fulfills my prediction last week that we'll get a new PS Plus game that is day and date on PlayStation. So I'm 2 for 2 with that, between that and Little Devil Inside. But we also got Star Ocean: The Divine Force, that's coming to PS4 and PS5 next year, and then the state of play wrapped up with Little Devil Inside. That got a longer gameplay trailer, and that's coming to PS4 and PS5 in 2022. Janet, I want to start this conversation off asking you, how was the state of play for you?
It was kind of rough, to be honest. Now, it didn't break my heart as deeply as I think it really bothered some other people. Because again, we talked about having tempered expectations with this. State of play is rarely wowing folks. But it just didn't really have any of the high notes that I usually expect, at least a few like very notable high notes. And for me, I feel like the star of the show is maybe Star Ocean, the Divine Force. But again, that's not an IP that speaks to me. That's just kind of the sentiment that I saw. Like I live stream these all the time with my community, and I kind of get like it's nice to see sort of the temperature of folks who maybe are fans of certain things and not others. I feel like that was sort of the most notable thing in terms of IP power and surprise. For me, my personal highlight of the show is Death's Door, which I'm so salty I didn't like predict this on the show or on. I do a bingo card too when I stream it, and I try to like think of things that could happen. And I feel like that was one that I totally didn't think of for some reason, like a cool port, like something coming to PlayStation for the first time. And I had mentioned Death's Door, if not on this show, then like a couple different places on the internet about how much I hope this comes to PlayStation and what a great title I think it is for if folks want to platinum a game, because it has like a decent amount of collectibles, some fun secrets, and I just think it'd be a really cool thing to go through on PlayStation. So I was very excited to see this. That's my personal highlight. But I think the fact that there's not really a super clear or super amazing standout speaks to the weakness of this show. And yeah, I mean, if you were if you were hesitant that state of play isn't always that wavy, I feel like this is a reminder of how low the floor can be. Again, there were some cool things, and I'm excited for like We Are OFK, and I like Bug Snacks, but there wasn't really any. The highs were like, is this the, I guess that was the high a few minutes ago by the time it was over. That was kind of my read on it. What about you? Where were you at on this one?
I think that's a good way of putting it, right? By the time it's over, it's like, oh, so I guess the headliner really was Little Devil Inside. And based on the tweets leading up to the state of play, they did reveal that Little Devil Inside was going to be there. And usually when you do that as a company, you're doing that with whatever your headliner is, because you want the biggest thing to get people to actually watch the state of play. So as soon as I saw Little Devil Inside be the tweet that they put out, I was like, oh, okay, that's going to be the biggest, most exciting thing there. And sure enough, that was their closer. And that was the thing that was most substantial at the state of play. Overall, yeah, I was pretty let down by it. And that was even with me tempering my expectations by a lot, because, you know, we did the thing where we went through the previous state of play and went through, hey, this is what this is going to be, right? And the language they're using here to describe this thing, they mentioned, hey, it's going to be third party focused. It's going to be 20 minutes. They're doing nothing to create big hype around this. And I think they tried their best there to be like, hey, you know, don't expect the big games. Don't expect Horizon. Don't expect like big stuff. But even last week when we were talking about our dreams, right? Like one of my dreams was Pragmata. Could we get another appearance from that? And one of the things you mentioned was Final Fantasy 16. You know, because when PlayStation says they're putting out a presentation like this, I think you hope that to some extent that means that we're going to get some sort of updates that are going to speak to the audience as a whole. And I think my main disappointment with this state of play is that I think for so many people that watch the state of play, there's going to be stuff here that speaks to nobody. In terms of like going through the whole state of play and being like, there's nothing here that speaks to me. I'm lucky that I like Bug Snacks, and I'm probably going to play the Big Snacks DLC. Death's Door is exciting. I played that on Xbox. I don't really feel like playing that one again, but it's exciting that it's coming to the platform for people who want to check that one out. And then Little Devil Inside was one that we talked about it a lot last week. That's one that I really wanted to see more of, because I think the art style for that game looks so cool, and the original reveal for that one was very interesting. From what we saw at this latest state of play, I thought it continued to look pretty cool in a lot of places. Some of the stuff they showed in the gameplay trailer didn't stick with me as much. You know, there are some things that they showed in terms of the overworld map and how you look traveling through the overworld, where I was like, oh, I don't know if I love how this art style looks here. But for the most part, I do think the game still looks pretty novel and pretty cool, and I want to check it out, right? And it's not one that is knocking me off my feet by any means, but it's one that I'm like, cool, I'm glad I got to see more of that. But I also don't think that's a worthwhile headliner for a state of play.
I think especially one thing that kind of disappointed me was the way it was headlined. Like, I think you're right in that I totally should have been there too once they said Little Devil Inside. Like, if that's the lead, then that kind of says a little bit about what we're going to see here, what we're not going to see. But usually when they have a headlining game, it's either, well, one, the entirety of it, or like the vast majority. And even though it did get a decent amount of screen time, I think this definitely could have benefited from some level of developer commentary, because I was sort of left piecing it together slowly alongside the people who, you know, in my chat or just on Twitter afterwards. And then I was like looking up the website after the fact, because I'm like, all right, well, the first time we saw this game, it was very like action oriented, and we saw a lot more of like combat and enemies. And now it's like, okay, we're getting like a little look at maybe traversal and side quests, and maybe like you can buy items perhaps. Like here are some of the NPCs. Here's what it looks like to go from like house to house or like area to area. But you know,
I don't know. I think developer commentary though like has almost the reverse effect, because what was that other game we talked about earlier? This one, right? And this one had developer commentary, and it made me like want to play the game even less with like how they're explaining things, and just like I feel like there's like it almost gets like too lost in the paint to try to sell us on the game. I feel like if anything, like they should do what KindaFunny's done in the past before, right? With the KindaFunny showcases, where it's like the developer sends like a blurb for like the presenter to like talk a little bit about it for like a minute, because I think the developer commentary usually like really gets lost in the sauce, and they're going on a little too long about things that like are hard to explain unless you have a controller in your hands.
I do think there's a place in time, because one of the presentations I liked this year a lot was the Annapurna presentation, and that had a lot of developers talking and introducing us to their studios and them actually selling us on the game. And I think what this presentation needs in general is better editing. Like I think they really need an editor to go, okay, how do we make this thing feel cohesive and feel produced in a way beyond, all right, you send me your shit, we stitch it together and we give it to the audience. Because I think for Little Devil Inside, for all of what we see, I'm kind of with you, Janet, that I could have used some commentary to walk through this is what the gameplay loop of Little Devil Inside is. And to what Barrett's saying, I think there has to be some moderation in that. You know, I don't like you can't talk at us. It can't be this boring thing of you explaining the game and it being done in a way that feels boring and that lulls us to sleep. I think you have to do it in a way that feels well produced and feels like there is meaning and intention behind the way you're walking us through. Because watching that trailer for Little Devil Inside, I wanted to get more excited for it, but I did have the questions of, all right, so what is the moment to moment of the game? I'm getting a lot of tone here. I'm getting a lot of like style choices here. I'm getting a lot of like moments here, but you're not really giving me what the game is. Like, why should I be excited for this game beyond it looks like it has really cool art, or it looks like it looks like it could be fun, right? I want to know what is actually fun about it.
Yeah, I think they like sort of, if we're really kind of going in on this trailer a bit, I think it kind of like floundered because it had here's the art, here's the world, and we're like throwing you into this. But the flashes were like fairly long, but outside of context. I feel like usually when you're doing like, there's a couple ways to show like a good chunk of gameplay, and one of them is to have like an almost uncut chunk where it's like, this is the first 10 minutes of this game, or we're throwing you into this section or this side quest, or here's what this thing looks like. But to sort of be slowly but unceremoniously taken from, okay, there's trains, and then we're like slowly on the train, and like maybe I'm doing inventory, like it's a lot of me having to fill in those gaps, and I don't know the game. This is like one of my first time seeing it, like my second time seeing it formally. And for some people, I think we have to remember too, this might be the first time that they're seeing this game. And I feel like when I combine the two times I've seen this game, I can kind of tell you what the game is, but I really need to have seen both of those. And even then, I feel like my answer might be different than your answer or Barrett's answer or chat's answer. And I think that's a little bit rough. Now, that being said, I don't think that means anything necessarily bad for the game. I'm still excited for it. I'm still going to go in for it. And there have been plenty of games where even Deathloop, where we saw that game a million times. And I was like, I came into that preview with y'all and I still didn't really know is it rogue? Is it not rogue? Like I still had a lot of questions. So that's not to say that every other team is knocking it out of the park, or that you necessarily need to totally have a perfect delivery on what your game is. But I feel like for this being the headliner, not headliner, and for it to lack that clarity, I think also made it feel a little bit weaker as a headliner, besides the fact that usually when they have a headline for a state of play, it's like just that game, and it's like maybe a bigger AAA known quantity.
I do think that one thing that this could have benefited by this game in particular would be if this was a PAX setting or a convention setting where they put out the state of play, and then as the state of play is coming out, people hit like the preview embargo for previews, and people can actually write about it because they played it at a PAX setting or they played it at a public setting. I think that would go a long way in terms of, oh, this trailer looked cool, and then you read an article and it's like, oh, okay, people are saying this is dope also. All right, cool, I'm in. I think without that, you kind of lose a lot of what makes a game like this actually magical, because we're getting a lot of like showing or we're getting a lot of them showing and not enough of like, all right, cool, but what is it? Like, what am I doing? What is that moment to moment? But yeah, like I think that is the state of play, right? I think overall, the tone I get from a lot of people is people are very underwhelmed, and I think that transitions into my next question, which is, where are we at with state of play? What is the state of play? Is state of play good enough? And this is a question that I posed to the audience because I went on Twitter, like we do, asked the question, asked people to fill in the Patreon form, and people had a lot to say. I'm always very impressed by how much people are able to show up to the occasion, even though I put up the question on Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, y'all have already gone through and answered the hell out of the question, and this one was no different. You guys had a lot to say about this, and so I'm going to pull in a lot of your answers in terms of, is state of play good enough? But I do want to start with you, Janet. What is your response to the question? Is state of play good enough?
I'm going to say no, and I know it's going to bother a lot of people, but I'm going to say no simply because I think that we should always strive for a little bit more. And I think we've gotten a lot better at figuring out what state of play is. I think if state of play never gets better, I won't be terribly upset by it. But I think this showcase this showing in particular is an example of the ways that it can sometimes be uneven. And I think that's really what disappointed me with this one. And I think a lot of the community felt this way as well, where state of play, it's becoming a bit of a more known quantity. We sometimes have like the state of plays that it's just Horizon, it's just God of War, it's just this thing. We know it's going to be a deep dive into the intricacies of the game. Occasionally they throw one or two other things, but it is just that game. Sometimes they have like maybe an indie angle. Sometimes it's just like a random smattering, but usually there's a few highlights. I think the fact that this one is so different is worrying in a sense of maybe you're not really getting this together, but I do think that this is a once in a blue moon low light rather than a concerning trend. But that's why I answer that as no, because of showcases like the one we just saw pretty much. What about you?
I think I'm in a similar place. I think state of play has kind of settled into its tone / level of expectation where it is we know what to expect from a state of play now. And I think the part of the conversation we have around it is taking it and comparing it to other things. And that's not always fair. I don't think it's fair to compare the state of play to a Nintendo Direct. Because when you're going into a Nintendo Direct, I think people are expecting the world of a Nintendo Direct, especially based on the language that goes into any given Nintendo Direct. For state of play, I think PlayStation over the last few years, as they started state of play and kind of settled into state of play, I think we've settled into a place that is a bit lower than when we started state of play. Because if you look, I have like the last few state of plays that we've gotten in 2021 here, right? I got the PlayStation blog post, and so there was a state of play in February, there was one in May, and there's one in July. The one in July we recapped a little bit last week, but to run through it very quickly, right? The July state of play was Moss Book 2, Arcadegeddon, Tribes of Midgard, Fist, Fortune, Shadow Torch, Hunter's Arena Legends, which I can never remember the title of, Sifu, Jet the Far Shore, Demon Slayer, Lost Judgment, Death Stranding Director's Cut, Deathloop, and that was it. But that was fairly better than what we just got, right? Like, yeah. I would say that is
fairly better though?
Oh, yeah.
I would say so, because I can point to a few highlights from that. And even some of the stuff that I'm not as interested in, I think was still at least interesting at the time. Like some of the indie offer, like it kind of had a more, it's still like a weird smattering is the thing. I think couching these is like I think the thing is it's so tough because they want people to watch it, right? And I love indie stuff and you love indie stuff. But unfortunately, I think the reality is if they said this is the PlayStation Indie Showcase, people might not show out for that in the same way if it's just who knows what's here. Then the con of that is like it's hard to like match. So yeah, it's kind of a rough position to be in, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and to be fair, right? That's not even me saying that it is like that is an amazing state of play by any means. But I do think that like coming off of this last state of play, I do think I would put this at the bottom level of the latest state of play we just got is probably the worst state of play we've gotten. This state of play, I would say, is inches better, but also not one of the best state of plays. But then you get to the state of play in May, and that is the Horizon Forbidden West broadcast, which was essentially an extended gameplay trailer for Horizon Forbidden West. And I would say for what that was fantastic. I think that showed off Horizon perfectly. We saw what we needed to see. I think most people really liked what we saw. I really liked what we saw from that. And it was what it was advertised as. Hey, we're going to deep dive a bit into Horizon Forbidden West, and I thought that was a great use of a state of play. We got the February 2021 State of Play, which is one that I forgot about. If you asked me when was the last time we got State of Play before the Horizon one, I would have been like, I don't know, man. The Demon Souls one that nobody watched. Like I do not remember this one, or I did not remember this one until I read through it, and I was like, oh yeah, we did get that. And so this State of Play was the PS5 version of Crash Bandicoot 4, Returnal gameplay, the introduction of Sifu, Knockout City, Solar Ash, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, which was like the first gameplay reveal of it, Oddworld Soulstorm, which I think that came with the release date of April 6th for that game, and possibly it coming to PS Plus. I forget if that was announced there or not. We got a trailer for Kena Bridge of Spirits. We got a trailer for Deathloop, which is pretty much the case for any State of Play. And then we got Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade coming.
Maybe that's what was wrong. Like everyone joked, like when we see Deathloop again, maybe that's the secret sauce holding the whole thing together, you know?
Yeah. And so like that's another one that I would compare to the one that we got in July. Like I think those are pretty on par. But then I went back digging because I remember vividly there being a State of Play where I was like, this is the shit. This is what I'm talking about right here. So I take you back, Janet and Barrett, back to September 2019. All right, September 2019. I have the complete recap. This is again from the PlayStation.
You weren't even here yet, Blessing. Think about that.
I wasn't, but if you remember, if you remember, Bear, I remember this one vividly because this was actually during my up and comers.
Oh, it was. I remember this.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was during my up and comers week.
That was a fun week. Remember when you and I would Uber together every morning? That was
I do remember that. That was a great time. One day we're gonna be back in the office.
I fucking miss you, man.
I miss you too,
man. Let's go get drunk.
Let's do it. Oh man, Barry. One day, man, we'll be back in the studio soon. But yeah, this is during my Up-and-Comers week, which is why I remember it so vividly because Greg Miller had to fly down that Tuesday, and that Tuesday I hosted with Xavier Woods. Greg Miller flew down to play The Last of Us Part 2 to do the preview event, so he can come back and talk about it because that was at this State of Play. And so when I go through, right, this is State of Play September 2019. And I don't think this is in order of announcements. This is just in order of importance. But we got a new trailer for The Last of Us Part 2, PlayStation Plus free games for October, The Last of Us Remastered, and MLB The Show 19. We got a trailer for Modern Warfare. We got the introduction of a game called Humanity, which was coming to PS4 and PSVR. We got the limited edition Death Stranding PS4 Pro bundle. We got Medieval PS4 demo for that game, which launched that day, I believe. We got Civilization 6 coming to PS4 on November 22nd. We got Arise, a simple story announced for PS4. We got Wadham coming to PS4 in December. We got LA Noire, the VR game, coming out that same day for PSVR. Let's see. We got After the Fall, a game from the Arizona Sunshine people, which I don't remember too much. We got Gorn for PSVR, and then we got Stardust Odyssey announced for PSVR. And again, like, there's a range there in terms of hype and excitement, but what I will say is the main events I will say for this State of Play, I think helped set expectation for us going, oh, State of Play is gonna be bangers, because this State of Play is a banger right here.
Yeah, I mean, I think well, here's my question for you. Have you settled into the ideology, which we've tossed this around the show a couple times, but I feel like we haven't like re-examined it super closely. Is it State of Play versus PlayStation Showcase? The Showcase is definitely going to be dope, and the State of Play TBD. Like, is that kind of where you see both of them? And do you think it's going to be like that forever? Is that sort of where they've kind of landed in terms of lanes?
I think for the time being, I had this. This is one that I actually had a little bit of discussion on KFGD, with I think Tim or somebody, or maybe it was before the reaction stream. But it's one that I have thought about a little bit, and where I've kind of landed on it is PlayStation Showcase is obviously the big event. That is where they're going to announce all their biggest stuff. That is where you're going to get the new reveals of a Wolverine game from Insomniac, or like the new trailer for God of War, or whatever the big magnificent thing is. That is the PlayStation Showcase. That is where your max hype should be. Under that, theoretically, is PlayStation State of Play, which kind of over the years, I think it's kind of like, again, settled into being a bit more low key, a bit more, hey, don't have huge expectations for this. This is essentially an update of a thing, right? This is you getting your game updates, which is fine, but also in that same breath, right? I think under that you have the PlayStation blog posts, or when PlayStation comes out one morning and they're like, hey, we're going to talk about we're going to announce 7 indie games coming to PlayStation on Twitter, and then talk about them all on the PlayStation blog, or the similar thing for the PSVR. I think you have that as well, which theoretically should be under State of Play. State of Play, I think, should be smack in the middle of those two. But as we go, State of Play continues to inch downward more and more toward that PlayStation blog thing, to the point where this last State of Play, I don't understand why this wasn't a blog post.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that too. That's another sentiment that I saw a lot on Twitter, specifically, of people saying this should have been a blog post. And I feel like my only pushback is I wonder if they dropped this as a blog post, if some people would have been like, this could have been a State of Play. I kind of feel like people would have been.
The most hype thing, at least for me, I know, like, you know, we all have our different perspectives on things. The most hype thing was Death's Door coming to different platforms. And again, I'm in the same boat where, like, I played it on Xbox, or I played it on PC. Like, I probably won't go back to that anytime soon. Maybe I'll pick it up on Switch at some time next year or something like that, right? But, like, that was the most hype announcement. And even that, I was like, yeah, this could have been a blog post announcement. Like, we would have been fine. They would have dropped a trailer on Twitter, and like that would have been fine and dandy. And I don't think we would have missed anything.
Yeah, and I think I'm with that too. Where I think this could have been one of the, hey, here's 6 PlayStation updates for you, and we'll detail them all on the blog, and that would have worked pretty fine for this.
I think the thing that they've done in the past, where it's like they do like a weird Twitter thread update like once every hour or whatever.
There are definitely Twitter threads that PlayStation has put together that were more exciting than State of Play.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. That I lightly agree with that. Mostly because I don't know if I can like think of a thread that wowed me more than this. Not that this wowed me by any means, but I do think it, like, I don't know, it kind of hits like when you do. It's interesting because you can kind of get away with more with like the blog and the tweets because there's no floor for that, nor should there be, right? Like, you're here announcing stuff on your platform. So I'm never gonna you're never gonna look at like a PlayStation Twitter thread and be like, wow, really disappointing Twitter thread from PlayStation, because there's just not an expectation tied to it. So I think it's kind of easy for me to agree with that in the sense that I don't go in, you know, having an expectation, unlike the State of Play where I do. So like that, and, you know, as far as your like original question of, you know, what's the state of it? Does it need to be better? I would say yes, because to your point, I do think it should probably live more clearly in that middle ground, and it wavers in an awkward way in both directions, and it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, and I think that's the tough thing is I don't want to come to anybody and tell them, hey, your thing that you're doing on your own accord has to be this, right? Like they're the ones who throw State of Play. They're the ones who like cement like, hey, this is what it is, and like we're doing it because of XYZ reason. But I think on our side, as people who consume that content, have like at some point have to go, okay, cool, this is just going to be unexciting to me then. Like, I'm not going to get hyped for this in the way that I would be hyped for a Nintendo Direct or a PlayStation Showcase or what I would consider to be a bigger PlayStation thing, right? Like, I guess I'm not going to get hyped for it on that level if this is going to be what it is.
I will say, though, really quick, I do want to point out that, because I know we always make the Nintendo Direct comparison, some of them Directs be super whack, too. Like, I think,
for sure.
I think Nintendo, as they've gone on with more and more Directs, like, with that comes more highs, but also more lows. I have definitely watched some Directs where I'm like, man, this is just a series of L's with like really nice graphics, but it is a really nice graphically packaged L that I'm taking right now. And like, that's also just going to be part of it. So that's kind of also my hesitancy to say, oh yeah, these absolutely need to be better, because I think there's always going to be those moments of whackness regardless. I think just creating a more consistent vision and feeling and understanding from the community is really the best you can kind of get out of this kind of thing.
Well, Janet, speaking of the community, I want to pull some questions from the community. Remember, you can write in to patreon.com/kindafunnygames, where you can get the show ad free, but you can also get your questions in and your submissions, your reader mail for topic of the show. I'm going to start with Bander SN, who writes in and says, hey, Bless and Janet, happy November. My thoughts on State of Play is that it's usually a pretty middling event. State of Play has always felt to me like the equivalent of a Nintendo Direct Mini. Unless they specifically mention a big first-party game, these usually aren't destination viewing. This last State of Play, however, was particularly meh. I'm looking forward to Bugsnax DLC, but I think everything else besides Star Ocean felt like contractual obligations. I'd give it a C-. Coming off that one, I want to pull another write-in from Josh EG, who writes in and says, hey, Janet and Blessing. I was hopeful for a Final Fantasy 16 trailer. Imagine my excitement seeing Square Enix pop up during the latest State of Play, followed by my immediate disappointment. No shade towards Star Ocean, but you ain't Final Fantasy 16. That feeling is my feeling on these State of Plays. I understand I should temper my expectations, and from here on out, I'll go into these State of Plays expecting nothing, or skip them entirely. And like, that's kind of what I'm talking about a little bit in terms of hey, PlayStation, that can be what you want to be. If that's what you want State of Play to be, for sure, by all means. But you do lead to reactions like these where it's like, cool, then I'll just not have expectations.
What do you grade State of Play? Like someone taught Bander SN tossed out C-. What's your grade?
For this last one, probably a D, if I'm being honest. It's probably a D. And that's
very
rare
bold
for me.
of you to say that. That's very difficult. That's very brave of you to say.
The last D I gave for a showcase, like because we did the thing with at E3 where I think every showcase we gave it a grade, and I think the other showcases that I gave a D were like the Gearbox showcase and like the Coke Media.
No,
showcase.
Coke Media was like an F minus, man. Come on, that wasn't a D. Those weren't on the same level.
The Gearbox I would say was worse than the Coke Media one, just because I thought the Gearbox one was damaging. But to be fair, and
I remember when they went on set at the very end. Plus, it was great.
Yeah, but like remember when they had what's his name? What's the big man over at Gearbox name? Randy Pitchford. Remember when they had Randy Pitchford host it, and they just walked through the set of the Borderlands movie and talked to Kevin Hart, who very much did not want to be there the whole time. And they re-revealed the same game like 4 times in a row. What a great! I miss E3. E3 was awesome. And I'm grading on a curve because this wasn't as bad as those. Like, by any means, this was not as bad as those. But for a PlayStation thing, for a PlayStation State of Play, I would say this is a D. I think PlayStation has the capacity to do way better.
Yeah, I pretty much fall in the same line, mostly because I always grade these, and people always think I grade them like too harshly. They're like, "What do you mean? Like, what does it take?" And I'm like, "It takes a lot. Like, I don't give out A's. I used to teach. You got to earn that A, okay? Like, an A to me.
Damn, I would not want you to be my teacher.
Really going double above and because like
I'd be working so hard in that class.
C means that you've understood the assignment and did it at completion, that you've shown mastery of the not even mastery, a capability of whatever the task is, right? In this case, it's like, I guess, creating excitement and spreading information around your titles. That would be the assignment for, I think, all of these. B is, you've done that at a higher level, and A is an even higher level than that. So often I find myself giving a lot of Bs on these showcases, or even some Cs, because I think if you're not that exciting, that's kind of where I put it. And I think this one I probably would, I'd at least consider going down to a D, because it's sort of a hard sell. Like, if I tried to tell someone that this was good, I'd have a difficult time, I think, convincing them, because like you said, we all have different backgrounds on things that we get excited for, but the lack of the very vague shining star to this, where it's like maybe Star Ocean if you're into that kind of thing, but also like Little Devil Inside was kind of the headliner, but also like Death's Door is really good. So, and that's not to, sometimes that's for a good reason because there's so much that's exciting, but this was not one of those times. So yeah.
Kebabs writes in and says, PlayStation showcases have been consistently incredible. Get hype pieces on the level of an E3 press conference. State of Plays, however, are just dire. They're collections of, quite frankly, unexciting indie titles that would make up the midsection of a low-key direct. The only good ones have been those focusing on a single title, like Ghost of Tsushima's. Sony needs to really think about what it wants to do with State of Play, because in my opinion, it's actively hurting their conference image by being seen as the main press conference, since it has the catchier name than the showcases and thus is remembered first. I will say this though, Sony is much better than Nintendo at putting these out at reasonable times for both Japan and the US, which I do like. They do stream them at a decent time. But I do think the point of the singular title State of Plays are really good. We talked about that Horizon Forbidden West one, and I think that is a place where they shine. They also had a Demon Souls one late last year, which I mentioned earlier that like nobody watched, but I think that was one because they kind of stuck it in over the weekend. They surprise dropped it on like a Saturday or some shit at like a weird time. But then also like that one felt like it was held back a bit by the pandemic situation. Like, you watch that State of Play, and even the audio for the person who was narrating it sounded like it was from a computer mic. But for the most part, when they do the singular focus, hey, let's break down this game State of Plays, I think those are where they shine, and those could be the focus, or maybe should be the focus of State of Plays.
Yeah, I think those definitely have been some of the stronger showcases. I don't know if it's just because they're so focused that they can, I don't want to say be more thoughtful, because I don't want to imply that people aren't working really hard to put these together and thinking about how they fit and how they can be in conversation with one another. But I guess there's just inherently less to focus on, so they can kind of highlight it in a more careful way. I really like what Kebabs brings up here with the State of Play versus Showcase, just the naming, because I totally agree. Like, I know from like doing this that like, yeah, PlayStation Showcase is the big show, but I do remember State of Play more, which is kind of like a weird situation. On that note, too, it's been interesting to see, like, the other person bringing up Nintendo Direct Minis, how all of these different platform holders, or sort of thinking of multiple avenues in which to distribute their information, sort of the expectations tied to those, and how they're going to brand them going forward. Do you find yourself thinking of like PlayStation Showcase versus State of Play? Does one of those like, draw your eye a little bit more? Like, do you feel like, oh no, it's totally clear?
Well, I mean, I think for a lot of people, it's clear because PlayStation Showcase only happens once a year, right? I guess last year it kind of happened twice if you count the June one, but I don't think that technically was a showcase. I think the fall one was the only one that technically was a showcase. But with that, I think PlayStation hypes it up in a way that gets people excited, right? If PlayStation comes out and they tell you how excited to get, people will get excited. I think for the showcase, they weren't holding back in terms of hey, the showcase is happening, get hype for it. And because of that, people got hype for it. And so even with the way I often judge things like this is I look at the headlines that we put out for PS Love You or for KFGD and see the reaction. And, you look at our predictions episode for the PlayStation Showcase and the views on it are way higher than the predictions for the State of Play because I think people know, at least our audience, and I would assume the wider PlayStation audience knows the level of hype that you should bring into either. And so like, branding wise, like I think you talking about the Nintendo Direct Mini and like the different forms of branding that stuff. I think there's something there too. There's a couple of write-ins here that I think have a good idea, and I want to get into them in a second. But with us talking about the singular game PlayStation State of Plays versus these more low key ones, right? I would be down with if PlayStation was like, cool, we'll call them State of Play minis. Like this one that we just got and the one that we got in July. These are PlayStation State of Play minis. Whereas the big, hey, we're focusing in on one game, one of our first party PlayStation Studios titles, and giving a breakdown. These are our State of Play. I'm not a brand person, but I'll State of Play demo or State of Play, I don't know, breakdown,
Junior.
like State of Play Junior. Like I think something like that would go a long way in terms of building hey, we are now building something with State of Play. This is now something where we can kind of direct, no pun intended, how much excitement that people go into these things with. Because I think if you put like a mini, like just put a mini in the title of this one, then people aren't as upset. People are like, oh, they said it was going to be mini, as opposed to, all right, like a few State of Plays ago, we got this, and this, and you're telling me this one we're getting only like, we got a little devil inside headline. What are we doing?
Right.
To pull in a couple more, Joseph Hooper writes in and says, just came to say that this State of Play was boo-boo. And in general, the last two presentations PlayStation has had have lacked great vision and pacing. Last year, it seemed like PlayStation was going to be the only company to perfect the digital showcase, with several PS5-related conferences that made even Destruction All-Stars seem passable. This year, they've mostly seemed uninspired and kind of whatever, hoping they're saving the big guns for next year, as they have more first-party titles to show. And I think that could be it too, right? Maybe their PlayStation is in a place where there's just not much to talk about because we're kind of in a lull right now.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a little bit the case. I mean, it's generally a little bit of a slower year. Again, that's not to say there aren't great games out this year. There's a lot of them, but there have been stronger years, even in recent memory. And I think next year will definitely be like a way bigger year for PlayStation.
Dave Norridge writes in and says, personally, it wasn't for me. And to be clear for people who are watching and listening, right? And I know like this, I feel like this topic of the show kind of has a dour tone to it. This is representative of the whole inbox for PS I Love You of where people are at with the State of Play, right? Like if there was a more positive spin or if we had more of a divide in terms of the positive and negative reactions to State of Play, best believe I would include them because I love getting the diverse opinions on the show. This is representative.
It honestly is kind of shocking how much people didn't like. Like, I'm not saying it was good because it was definitely a weaker one. I feel like that's pretty clear based on the other ones they've had. But I sort of watched it and I was like, all right, this one didn't really hit. And everyone was like super negative on it, which I was surprised to see how much people were like, we do not like this. This was not good. It was like very much a consensus, which was a little bit shocking to me.
To continue on Dave Norridge, personally, it wasn't for me, and I appreciate not every presentation will be. That said, I think the way that Sony handles State of Play is the bigger disappointment. Announcing the event ahead of time, like they did, but then not really having any heavy hitters sets people up to be disappointed. I think this sort of show would have been more accepted if Sony did a State of Play at the end of every month. Some just updates like this one, sometimes bigger announcements. The regularity would mean that people wouldn't be disappointed by smaller presentations and instead are just more excited when larger games are shown. And then coming off of that, I want to bring in a write-in from Nathan Choquette who touches on a similar thing. What's good, y'all? Was wondering if you would think it would be too much of an ask to have State of Play each month if the showcase was rebranded to be a spotlight for cool games coming out in the next few months. And more importantly, to be able to announce PlayStation Plus games that are new and coming to the service soon as well. Not trying to do away with places that already kind of do this stuff like this, PlayStation Blog, etc., but having a place to find curated, good content all in one place would be awesome in my mind. What do you think of that idea, though? Is that too pie in the sky? Janet, what do you think of the idea of a monthly State of Play that is kind of this level that we've gotten recently?
I think that might be too much. Like, I just wonder if the reason I say that is because we already have the current cadence, even if it's not like a perfectly consistent cadence. And if within that cadence, which is less frequent than monthly, we already have some ones that are kind of clearly weaker, I wonder if we'll just have like a lot of ones that are not that exciting rather than having one standout one. You know, I think I worry that if they straight up just the same format, but monthly, now it's like now we never have one that's really dope, but sometimes you'll see something that's kind of okay. I think that the thing that's interesting about this too is it's about a lot of this is about the presentation and how you're introduced to something. There definitely are those standout games where whether it's because you maybe trust the studio or something about it is just inherently a little exciting, where you see it and you kind of are immediately bought into it and everyone's talking about it and everyone's excited about it. Or, you know, you hit a really good marketing beat like with Bug Snacks where, you know, they had that, ooh, it's Bug Snacks and everyone went crazy for that. You know, everyone was memeing and I think that's very rare. So that being said, I think you really need to be thoughtful and careful on how you're setting up the marketing of these games, especially for the smaller titles, in order to actually create genuine interest from the audience and not get them fatigued. Like we put up with it for Deathloop because, you know, people were pretty in on Deathloop, but yeah, and if you weren't, you weren't. But like, if that can't always be the case. So I think monthly would be too much.
Mm-hmm. I think it'd be an interesting idea. I think the problem is that would have to be somebody's job. Like you would have to have somebody be the producer for that thing monthly, and I think for PlayStation that might not be worth it. But I think I'd be into the idea if they were able to hit a cadence that wasn't the same thing each and every time there. Because I totally feel what you're talking about in terms of the Deathloop comparison. Because I think they're with PlayStation, they have a good set of plenty of first party studios to pull from in terms of what they're working on. But PlayStation seems to not want to oversaturate the first party stuff in terms of, hey, we don't need to see God of War every single month, right? Like I think them playing it conservative helps them out in terms of building the hype when we do see it. And so like they probably wouldn't pull from that as much. And so it would be on third party stuff and probably like the PlayStation Indies. And when I go to the PlayStation Indies website, I love going to it every now and then because it gives a good idea of what are the indies that PlayStation kind of values. Because like you have the partnerships that they do and you have the stuff that they advertise and you have your Kena Bridge of Spirits and you have your Little Devil Insides and like there are those indie games that PlayStation likes to own and talk about and represent. And when you go to the website, I think there's a good amount of cool. You go in, the first things you see, Axiom Verge 2, Oxenfree 2, you see Carrion, A Shore Hike is on there. You scroll down. I think there's a tab for upcoming, right? And on upcoming, they gotta update it because Fist, Fortune, Shadow Torch is still on there, and that's a game that's already out. But you see things like Solar Ash, you see Stray, Little Devil Inside, A Shore Hike, Axiom Verge 2, which I believe is already out. Maybe it's not out on PlayStation. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think there's enough there that you could kind of rotate in and maybe have one where it's like, cool, this State of Play for this month is going to be focused on only a couple of titles, but we're diving deep into both Little Devil Inside and Stray, right? I think there's something there that could be exciting, and you could turn that into programming, and it could be entertaining, and that lowers the expectation for State of Play from, I think, the general audience, but I kind of think it does that in a good way to where people aren't as disappointed because they know what they're getting, right? I think you turn it into more of an inside Xbox, which I know we haven't gotten that in a while, but you know what I mean? I think there's something there in terms of that, but it's a lot of work as well that I don't think PlayStation probably wants to do.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun. And you know, it's funny because I've just scratched the surface on the kind of content that PlayStation actually puts out for their stuff, which I think I'm not alone in that. You know, how many of us are literally tuning into everything, like every live stream, every event, PlayStation has their own podcast that they put out. Like it's a lot of content to consume. That being said, doesn't mean that they shouldn't put it out. I do think there's something interesting about them maybe creating a more consistent but differently formatted update. I think even something as similar as maybe like adding more video content to the PlayStation blog, where it wouldn't just be like, you know, having to read through it or reading someone already summarizing it, maybe having that in a more bite-sized thing. I think of things like on the Nintendo side where they have a Nintendo Minute, and PlayStation obviously has, again, their own shows and their own angles. But
they have like PlayStation Underground. They brought that back into form.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah, I think maybe turning one of those into a little bit more of a shining star. Again, I don't think it would necessarily be going toe-to-toe with State of Play, but I think there is something there where it's like, how can we make something that's fun and interesting and providing value where people are going to get something out of this? Because that's really, and that's also going to, benefit us for our brand, would be the sweet spot there. Because admittedly, Xbox does a lot of their live streams where they're kind of putting out that kind of monthly content. And I never really watch those because also they're really long too. So I'm like, I'm going to see it for 3 hours. And yeah, exactly. So I think it's worth exploring the idea of more consistent video showcase curated content. But you really have to be thoughtful about it and think about who is this for and who's actually going to consume it and why are we doing it.
Janet, I think that's a good conversation. That's enough for PlayStation State of Play. I want to talk about some PlayStation updates, but before we do, let us tell you about our sponsors.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Upstart. If you avoid looking at your credit card statements every month, you aren't alone. With interest, it can feel like you're in a never-ending debt cycle, but Upstart can help you get out from underneath your debt and start living your life again. Upstart is the fast and easy way to get a personal loan all online. Upstart looks at more than just your credit score. They look at your current employment and credit history to find you a smarter loan rate. You can even check your rate in just 5 minutes for loans between $1,000 and $50,000. We've talked a lot about how Greg Miller was really bad with managing money when he first came out to IGN. He could have used Upstart back then. Thankfully, we have it now. Find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today when you go to upstart.com/kindafunny. That's upstart.com/kindafunny. But don't forget to use our URL to let them know we sent you. Loan amounts will be determined based on your credit, income, and certain other information provided in your loan application. Upstart.com/kindafunny.
Janet, hit me with those updates.
All right, we got starting with PlayStation 5 has sold 13.4 million units. For this, I'm pulling from Matt Perslau over at IGN, who writes, Sony's latest financial reports have announced that 13.4 million PlayStation 5 consoles have been sold to date, with 3.3 million PS5s being sold within the July to September Q2 period. Over on PlayStation Plus, the service has hit 47.2 million subscribers, marking an increase of 2.2 million users year on year and a million more than the last quarter. PlayStation Network monthly active users is down, though, to 104 million. Just 3 quarters ago, it was 114 million. That decline may be due to the improving pandemic conditions resulting in people playing less games. The figures sing a familiar tune to Sony's last quarter, where it also broke its own revenue records for the same quarter. Despite the continuing global chip shortage, it seems that Sony is not having too much trouble shipping PlayStation 5s, so much that the PS5 is the fastest selling console in U.S. history. Blessing. Mm-hmm. What do you make of these numbers, and how has your relationship with PSN and PS Plus evolved over these last 2 generations?
I mean, these are incredible numbers. I think that given the chip shortage and the demand for consoles, or I guess the consoles being sold out specifically, it's fairly impressive that they're able to still have the fastest selling PlayStation despite all of that. And so I think that's really impressive. I think the thing about the PlayStation Network and the PlayStation, the active users on PS Plus is very fascinating, because we've talked about it a lot over the last year of how much the pandemic has skyrocketed demand for video games, or interest in video games, and people have been joining the video game ecosystem at a record-breaking speed. And so it's interesting to see that it seems like that might be slowing down given these numbers that they're showing. I forget where I read this. This is one that we've definitely talked about on Games Daily in terms of what are the permanent effects of the pandemic, right? Is there going to be a level of permanent interest in video games? And these numbers make me wonder, oh man, is there less hope for that than I thought? I'm sure overall there'll still be a net positive in terms of the people that ended up falling into video games and sticking around, and the interest remaining. But I do wonder if there are less people that are as active on PSN, does that mean that demand, or not demand, does that mean that supply might open up soon for the PlayStation 5? The answer there is no, but I don't know, man. I'm making hope a little bit, at least.
It's nice to dream.
Right.
Yeah, definitely impressive given the state of how hard it is to even like get like when do you think we'll be able to go into a store? Like I'm in Target and there's like a PlayStation 5 on the shelf or behind a glass, because usually they don't just leave them hanging out there.
Late 2022 would be my guess, but that might be too like hopeful.
Yeah,
the chip shortage seems very dire.
Yeah, I am hard pressed to imagine it being even that early, but that's gonna be such a good feeling. Like can you imagine like being able to go and like, obviously I imagine most of you would have to pre-plan this kind of a purchase of, that high of an amount of money, but like you can like get a loaf of bread and a PlayStation 5 like in the same day, just like casually.
Oh my God, just casually just walk in, get yourself like, it's like, man, I'm gonna do some grocery shopping and get my deodorant, gonna get my mouthwash. Oh, is that a PS5? Why not?
So, I've been meaning to pick one of those up.
I've been wanting to play Returnal.
I've been hearing a lot about this on Yes, I Love You, XOXO, despite not owning the console yet. But yeah, that's actually the state for a lot of people, where like a lot of folks that want a PS5 just straight up cannot get one. So hopefully that gets remedied, sooner rather than later. But as far as PSN and PS Plus, I definitely think, the online usage is very much a pandemic thing, it feels like, just because that was so much of the only way you could really socialize safely for a long time. It's like that, and like a lot of people using Zoom. So I think that's very much like reminiscent of that. For PS Plus, I think it kind of speaks to the improvements and the intrigue behind PS Plus in the last set of years. I know certainly for myself, like I have not always had PS Plus because I don't necessarily care about always, playing online or anything like that. And the games don't always speak to me either. But I feel like at this point, I really cannot see a world where I ever let that subscription expire, just because I feel like now I get so much consistent value out of it, whether it's like an interesting day and date game, or whether it's like an old game that I never got around to. And then with the PS Plus collection, like I think that definitely helped move the needle for me and my interest with PS Plus over the last few years.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious to see how these numbers evolve. The PS5 being the fastest selling console in US history, I think is super wild. And the PS4 numbers, by the time we hit toward the end of the generation, were already super impressive. Like that exceeded 100 million. And I mean, this kind of speaks to the PS5 is probably going to exceed 100 million. But I wonder, one, if it exceeds the PS4, and two, if it does, like how quickly is that going to happen, right? Like I remember listening to podcasts like 8 years ago, because I've been listening to video game podcasts forever. And I remember there being conversations of, is console gaming dead? Is PC gaming the new wave? And I don't think there's ever been an instance where like a group of a group of journalists have been so incorrect. Like group of video game journalists have been so incorrect about like an idea of console gaming going away because PC gaming is about to take over. Is the PS4 and Xbox One doomed? Like that couldn't have been more wrong, given where we're at today, where people are climbing over each other to hopefully get a cent of a PS5. It's crazy.
But is console gaming going to be dead, with Sony having formed the PlayStation PC label for its PC games push? This comes from Andy Robinson at Video Games Chronicle. Also, that's a joke. I don't think consoles are dead.
That's a great transition, though.
Yes, thank you. PlayStation has formed a new PlayStation PC label specifically for its PC gaming operation. It's emerged. On Wednesday, Steam users noticed that the platform holder's PC releases had their publisher switched to PlayStation PC LLC from the previous PlayStation Mobile label. According to a corporation wiki listing, Sony Interactive Entertainment registered the PlayStation PC name in April this year via its California-based headquarters. Although the name appears to be a formality, it represents another strong signal that Sony intends to increase its gaming output on the PC platform. Sony's first modern PC ports were Horizon Zero Dawn in August 2020 and Days Gone this May. Looking ahead, Uncharted 4: A Thief's End and Uncharted: The Lost Legacy will also make the jump to PC in 2022, shortly after they arrive for PS5, and God of War was announced as an upcoming PC port this month. Another PlayStation title, Sackboy: A Big Adventure, may be coming to PC too, according to a listing spotted on Steam's database this week. For this discussion, I'm going to pull from Drew Venator, who wrote into the show and said, "Hey, Bless and Janet, loved listening to the podcast last week. You're both doing a terrific job as co-hosts. I had a disagreement with Jan's position last week." Okay, who put this in the show, first of all?
That was me. I was going to read it myself. I was gonna like give it like the angry voice and everything.
You still can. Do you want to?
Drew Venator comes in at like in a good from a good place. They're being very kind about it. I can still read the question though, because the question is aimed towards you. And so
Yeah, go ahead,
I'll
go for
take
it.
the role, right? Juvenator writes in and says, "Hey, Bless and Janet, love listening to the podcast last week. You both are doing a terrific job as co-hosts, which thank you so much, Juvenator. I had a disagreement with Janet's position last week on PlayStation
This
exclusives
is the first time
coming
this
to
has
PC."
happened.
Wait, say again?
So this is the first time this has happened in show history. Somebody
Yeah, I can't believe somebody has a disagreement with Janet's position. Last week on PlayStation exclusives coming to PC, an indefinite time after they come out on PlayStation, and how the current state is a best of both worlds, etc. I disagree with that. One, I think it sucks that there is zero transparency from PlayStation when it comes to their exclusives, or when one of their exclusives will come to PC. That to me is not pro-consumer, as it reduces the purchasing power of the consumer and creates a situation where we're stuck with a quote, will it, won't it, PlayStation 5 or PlayStation games coming to PC. Then two, no cross-buy. Why are we okay with buying PlayStation exclusives on PlayStation and rebuying them on PC? Doesn't seem like a great way to treat loyal customers. Blessing, you mentioned wanting to play God of War on your Steam Deck in bed. Are you really going to spend $60 again? Why won't you just stream it from your Backbone? Well, to chime in there, I don't own a Backbone, and also have an Android, and I believe Backbone works with Android, so that is the exact reason why. Also streaming. Again, thanks for all you both do. At the end of the day, I'm happy more people can play PlayStation games on different platforms, but I think if we have a platform at all to influence Sony's decision, LOL, surely the ideal state is PlayStation games launching on PC day and date, and cross-buy / cross progression for free. Thanks, Janet and Bless. Janet, Juvenator's coming at you reckless. He's calling you names. What's your response?
First of all, thank you for writing so much, because this is a very like well thought out statement here. I feel like what you're asking for is play anywhere on the Xbox, which is fair. You know, I mean, I think we talk about when we look at the big three and sort of their identities, a lot of Microsoft's ethos, which is what Juvenator is. I don't know if you thought of that while you were writing this out, if that was, if that thread was already connected, but that is very much what Xbox is doing. And I feel like PlayStation is just doing a different thing. There's certainly an argument that what they're doing is worse. I wouldn't make that argument, nor did I last week, but I feel like that's sort of the position this is getting at. I would be in a world where PlayStation is still very much struggling to even properly do like a next gen upgrade that doesn't like have all these weird stipulations tied to it. I feel like we are at this moment in time far away from a cross-buy, cross progression for free world. Personally, I don't mind that it has that split. I guess I wouldn't mind it too much either way, because personally I'm a console player at heart. If they brought them day and date on PC, I would still play them on console, which is the same thing I do for Microsoft on that side of things, which I know sounds really weird to some people because it is like the less powerful platform. And I have a very souped up PC that can run stuff like, I'm sure, at a really high fidelity, but I don't care. I like having my console. Like, I like having that whole setup. That's what I grew up with. That's what I love, even when it's inferior in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's just kind of where I land with it. I think if they did do a day and date, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but it would be a change in their overall ethos and sort of how they position themselves. Now, we have seen PlayStation do this kind of walk back with their, will they support, backwards compatibility or not, which was like such a shocking zag when they like totally changed their language on the "we believe in generations" mindset. And then I feel like no one in the community really cared that they had like such a crazy walk back. But anyway,
which part of the walk back are you talking about with us being able to play PS4 games, or what part are you talking about specifically?
Yeah, I think the PS4 part specifically, where that was like a big conversation, and it was sort of like, yeah, like this is, we're going into a new generation, and they're like, what? No, of course we have everything. What do you mean?
With God of War and shit coming out on PS4 essentially. Yeah, that's it. That's actually a really interesting one to pull out regarding, because I think with all of this, the answer is money moves. And so for God of War and Horizon and other games like Miles Morales coming out on PS4 as well as PS5, or PS5 as well as PS4, that is very much them going, hey, we want to make more money off of this. We have Miles Morales is being built off of the infrastructure of Spider-Man. God of War is being built off the infrastructure of God of War 2018, right? Like we are able to build this in a way that does work with the PlayStation 4 audience. And for these first few years, it makes sense for us to try and have the best of both worlds. Because the PlayStation strategy, and I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of the ethos of PlayStation. The PlayStation strategy is we want to have exclusive titles for our console, and those exclusive titles are going to sell consoles. Those are going to be the reason, along with third-party stuff, but the primary driver is going to be our exclusive games selling our consoles. That is why we have the Ratchet and Clanks. That is why we have the Returnals. That is why we make deals for the Deathloops. But the PlayStation 4 has 100 million. We mentioned this before. The PlayStation 4 has over 100 million units out there. It makes a lot of sense that for the places where you can make it happen, let's sell a bunch of units of Horizon and Miles Morales and God of War and the games that make sense to double dip on both platforms. That same idea I'll take and apply to the PlayStation PC thing. Like first, before I even jump into Juvenator's question, right? I think the PlayStation PC strategy is a good one and a smart one. Given just the fact that we're able to get more people, or they're able to get more people to play these PlayStation games, but then also that is going to increase sales for them, right? Like them being able to put their games out on another platform is going to be huge for the sales and popularity of those games and those IP. And so it makes sense from that standpoint. And also as a consumer, I think it's really exciting that games like God of War and Uncharted are going to be able to take the benefits of like the big PC stuff, right? Like people being able to have a banger PC and take advantage of all the benefits, the DLSS, the ray tracing, all that stuff. I think that's going to be really cool, and I can't wait to like check that stuff out on YouTube, and I can't wait to play that stuff on a Steam Deck. But with that, like you take all those benefits, you take all of that, and hopping into Juvenator's question of, all right, so like, you know, why, like, it sucks that there is zero transparency in terms of when these games are coming to PlayStation or to PC, and then the lack of cross-buy. And I think those two things are also come back into the argument of the money moves. The Xbox comparison is apt in terms of, hey, Xbox does this and they do this very well, and that is big for them. That's a huge thing for them. The conversation I always have about Xbox is that Xbox, they treat themselves more of a platform than a company that is trying to sell a box, and a company that is trying to like a company that is kind of limited in their like, we want to sell a box and we want to sell these games. That is what PlayStation does. PlayStation wants to sell boxes and they want to sell games. Xbox wants you in their ecosystem, and they want you into xCloud, and they want you into Game Pass. And I think that supports the idea of the day and date PC thing. Whereas for PlayStation, a big part of PlayStation strategy being, hey, we want you to play these games on PlayStation first, and we want you to feel the need to buy a PS5 because we have Returnal on PS5 and only on a PS5, along with Deathloop and along with the other games I mentioned. That is going to go for them above and beyond in terms of actually having people show up and make that argument of, oh, I can only play this thing here. I'm going to buy the console so I can play this thing here. And there is the argument that releasing on both PC and PlayStation day and date is going to just allow them to make more sales the day of and appease everybody. But I think realistically for PlayStation, the strategy being PlayStation first is going to allow them to not have to worry about ecosystem in terms of having to split a cut with Steam or having to split a cut with Epic. When they're selling that many copies on PlayStation Store or PlayStation proper, all that money goes right back into PlayStation. And so like trying to split that with a PC audience, I think is going to see enough of a loss for them to where they're like, no, it's just easier for us to release on PC later. That, and I think there is also a double dip factor. And so to Juvenator's question of, am I going to buy it again on the Steam Deck? Yeah, I'm going to get it again. Mainly because, you know, I think for us as consumers, it is easier for us to reckon with, oh, I bought this game years ago, I'll buy it again on PC, right? You don't feel like you're buying the same thing twice. You don't feel like you're losing out, even though technically when you compare it to something like how Xbox treats their PC stuff, you are kind of missing out on that cross-buy factor. And I'll be honest and say that sucks for us quite a bit. But I think it's something that kind of comes to the territory of being on the PlayStation side.
I totally agree. Now, obviously, we can argue what would be better for the company, and then we can also argue what we want, because I think those are two different conversations that have crossover but aren't necessarily the same conversation. But yeah, I mean, will I rebuy things? I mean, if I don't want to, I won't, and if I do, I will. Like, I've had to rebuy so many games over the years, whether it's because they didn't transfer over or I got rid of them and changed up my collection or whatever it was. Like, you know, again, the Nintendo side of things, you'll rebuy everything. Now we're paying just to rent some of the things that they sold and then took away. Like, it's the Wild West out here. But again, it always goes back to strategy and their ethos, you know, like people always I think it's easy to quote unquote complain about why one company can get away with one thing and another can't. And while I think there should be some standardization in how we like, zoom out and look at these as, business models and platforms and places to game and kind of be able to have a little bit of a level of detachment. There is always those factors where like sometimes you are okay with certain things on one place and you're not somewhere else. We talk about things like, and everyone has their problems, right? There's like the Switch tax that was a big conversation like earlier, like in the generation and all that, the pseudo generation, because the Switch was weird. But, I think with PlayStation, the point against it, and again, I wouldn't be like sad if they did day and date PC, but I do think it would hurt sort of what their current branding is, because it is all about the exclusives. And I for one, when I have a conversation with someone on should I get PS5 or Series X, as if you can buy either easily, but let's pretend you could. For me, it's very much are you interested in kind of the Game Pass life, or are you interested in the exclusives that PlayStation has? And I think if you end up taking away that layer, you're not left with as much, especially if you're looking at comparing them directly with Xbox, which again, people say like, oh, it's not a competition. It kind of is though. Like, let's be honest about it. Like it's all games.
I mean, that's where a lot of, I think, critique comes from, right? Like it is a competitive space. And so when I play on my PS5 and I don't have quick resume, I am like, oh man, I wish I had quick resume, right? Like that sucks. And that is the thing that, like, there are plenty of things that I look at what out of the 3 platforms I own, I guess 4 if you include PC, right? Like my PC, Switch, Xbox, and PS5. There are things I can say about each and every one of those that I wish they would learn from each and every one of those. And I think that comes back into the thing of, yeah, like you mentioned Juvenator in the question mentions like anti-consumer. And is it anti-consumer that you're not getting the cross-buy on PC and console? And the only reason why that feels anti-consumer is because Xbox is doing a thing that feels very pro-consumer. And if Xbox didn't standardize that, then we wouldn't even realize, because that's not been a thing before, right? We've always had to buy our games on whatever multiple platforms.
I think too, though, it's about the feel, right? Like I think a lot of, and I love gaming and being in this industry and having this hobby. But a lot of these things are, at the end of the day, it still is a business. And part of that is the illusion of giving you the feeling that you have, that there is pro-consumerism, either in the sense of because maybe you're saving money on something, it feels pro-consumer. But the reality is it's all about the bottom line of how do we make money off of this.
It's all about making a company money at the end of the day, right? Like even the pro-consumer moves that companies make are at the end of the day to make them money.
Like Xbox was obsessed with being online all the time and doing streaming stuff way earlier. People didn't like it. They got clowned for it. And now with like, and that's not to say that xCloud's like, evil or wrong for them to do. But now we're getting at the point where the idea of the conversation of, oh my God, I can't use this disc regularly. Like there's consoles that don't even have a disc drive, like we're now past that, and we can finally like make some of those moves where they don't feel anti-consumer, when a couple years ago it very much felt like an anti-consumer move. Like it kind of like businesses and capitalism will get away with what society generally allows or where we move towards as technology advances, and like that is just kind of part of it too, where we can see a little bit of the identity of these companies. Like, who are you when you tried to roll something out and then you got yelled at and then you rolled it back? But you already showed me who you were. Like, I know you want to charge more for games with gold because you did. And then you said, oh, no, never mind. Like, I'm going to do it different, or like, online or whatever. So, yeah, that's not to say that we shouldn't be critical of these things or want companies to be more cognizant of the financial burden of gaming, because it's such an expensive hobby. But yeah, anyway, we could talk about this forever, but
yeah. Yeah, like I didn't, again, to I guess wrap this up, like the PlayStation PC thing, again, I think it's a good idea both on the business side and on the consumer side. I think only people win from being able to play games elsewhere. I think the day and date thing and like the lack of cross buy, I think there's a conversation there to be had. But yeah, at the end of the day, of why, the reason is they're gonna make more money this way. I think it'd be cool to have it be day and date as a consumer. I don't mind people being able to play PC games or like if for the next Horizon Forbidden West, if it came out the same day on PC as it did on PS5 and PS4, I'd be totally fine with it. I think that'd be cool. And like, I think it would make the conversation bigger of, oh yeah, looking over and seeing Andy playing his version of Horizon on PC, whereas I'm playing it on PS5. I think that is a win for everybody. I think that is the most fun thing. And seeing Andy probably taking advantage of the DLSS and all his PC bullshit that I don't know about. I think that stuff's fun. And like, I remember playing Cyberpunk and like learning what I keep saying DLSS. I think part of that is because of our NVIDIA thing that we have with KHD, that like now I know exactly what DLSS is. But like I remember seeing DLSS for the first time with Cyberpunk and like Andy doing it and going, holy cow, that's really cool. Like I didn't know that was a thing. And even like, with ray tracing on that is available on next gen consoles and all this shit. Like giving people the option to do all that shit, I think is so cool and so fun. That like I think that only benefits everybody. And so yeah, like I think it's a pretty good strategy overall that I'm curious to see how it like expands out as they put more games on PC.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what this conversation is like when we get, toward the end of the generation. We can kind of see more for what that strategy ends up looking like. Speaking of things that may or may not be pro-consumer, PlayStation Plus and PS Now games. Here's the lineup for November. For PS Plus, we got Knockout City, First Class Trouble, which we talked about earlier, and Kingdoms of Amulet Re-Reckoning. Over on PSVR, we have The Persistence, The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners, and Until You Fall. And on PlayStation Now, the lineup is Mafia Definitive Edition, Celeste, Final Fantasy, why am I blanking on Roman numerals? 9? Yes. And Totally Reliable Delivery Service starting tomorrow, which this was posted a few hours ago. So it's ready now. Any of these speak to you as titles that you're excited to check out or you're excited for the community to finally get a hold of because you've enjoyed them so far?
Yeah, very happy Knockout City is part of PS Plus.
Yeah.
Everybody go play Knockout City.
Yeah, multiplayer game of the year. Let's go.
Hell yeah. First Class Trouble. I'll give it a try. I'm not excited to try it, but like I want to give it a try because I like the social deduction games. This one just looked a bit janky from that trailer, but Jana, if you want to try it out with me, we can make this happen.
I'm down. Like, let's take that L together. You know what I mean? Like, and the worst case scenario is it's what you thought, and the best case is it's actually very fun.
Yeah, exactly. And then Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning, I know, is one that a lot of people dig. I know Greg Miller loves Kingdoms of Amalur, and so that's a win. And then the 3 VR titles that we've been talking about for a while that they're adding with PS Plus, right? The Persistence, The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners, and Until You Fall. The only one of those that I have any experience with is Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners, and a lot of people love that game. It was one that I tried out and fell off of, but I enjoyed watching Greg do the Horde mode in one of our streams that we did last year. It seems like a really fun game, and so
can you handle scary stuff in VR? Because The Persistence is a roguelike.
Wait, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I reviewed it for PlayStation Lifestyle like a million years ago, which like I know you're thinking, wow, a scary roguelike? Why would you review it's I wanted to do in VR. It was so I went through a lot of things in that game, but it actually was a very solid title. So I don't know. I think that would be, if you're willing to unravel and find all the cables for it.
I was gonna say if I'm willing to even bust out my PlayStation VR, the answer there is no. Until they release like a new big game for PSVR that like seems exciting, give me Trover Saves the Universe 2 and I'll bust out my PSVR so quickly. Until then,
okay.
Or Astrobot 2.
I'll hold you to that and
or
see if
Tetris Effect 2. Give me a 2 for any of the best VR games. Beat Saber 2.
Just all the 2s, but same. Knockout City, I'm so excited because so many people said this looks cool, but to be honest, I kind of wish it was free to play. Now it kind of, in a weird way, is if you have this very specific thing. So I'm hoping that those people that were
kind of free to play at actually no, it's free to play for the first few levels, isn't it?
It had like a sort of trial. It had like a trial week or something to kind of try to get people in. And for what it's worth, too, I think Knockout City has done really well for itself, despite the fact that a lot of people were sort of put off by the fact that it had a price tag to begin with. So hopefully there's just, more good things on that side. And then Celeste is obviously dope. So, I still got to dig in. We got to do our PlayStation Now thing.
I was going to say, this is another one where I look at the PlayStation Now lineup and I go,
I mean, Celeste is really, but I feel like if you wanted to play Celeste, you already did. I don't know, but if you're out there, go play it. It's really good.
Yeah, Celeste is awesome, and like Mafia Definitive Edition is going to speak to folks like Barrett. Final Fantasy 9, of course, those nerds.
I mean, but people we already played that game, but also go play Mafia Definitive Edition. It's a great game.
Yeah,
great performances.
The bummer with this one, and I always feel bad when I bring up other consoles on this podcast, but we've done it a billion times already, and so I'm just going to dive fully in, and you guys can get mad at me in the comments. This is one where this morning for KFGD, as I was compiling everything, Xbox Game Pass also revealed their November lineup for the same month. Oh my god, they got some bangers over there. That like by the time I read this PlayStation Now, I was like, man, y'all should have just kept this till tomorrow. Like, man, this is like. I don't know, man. I don't know. I look at this, I'm like, cool, I guess. But we should do our PlayStation Now.
Yeah, we gotta see what's in there. We gotta figure that out.
Yeah. Janet, it's time for PlayStation picks. This is where we highlight a few of the cool looking games coming to PSN this week. We got two big hitters for you. Those are Just Dance 2022 coming to PS5 on Thursday, November 4th. And then Call of Duty Vanguard comes to PS5 and PS4 on Friday, November 5th. We got one pick for you, a game called Bloodshore that's coming to PS4 and PS5 on Wednesday, November 3rd. Bloodshore is an interactive action movie about a televised battle royale between high-profile streamers, entertainers, and death row inmates. You control the fate of Nick, a washed-up actor who fights for a life-changing cash prize. And I'm so excited for this one, Janet, because
I feel like this does not... Go ahead.
It's from Wales Interactive, the folks who keep putting out the fucking Garbo FMV games where you're choosing your own adventure, and me and Greg keep playing these games for PS I Love You, and they're the best and worst. And this one being a battle royale gets me.
If you want a team, like I think they technically still default them to single player games, but I'm down to play this with you because I feel like this has no, like when you first started talking about this, I was like, okay, I'm in on this. And then you kept talking and I was like, this is not going to be good. And then I'm like looking at the footage now that like Barrett had pulled up and I'm like, I don't see a way this is going to be good. Now, that being said though, Wales Interactive, my first Wales Interactive experience, which I believe they're the publisher, but not the developer, correct, of these titles? That they keep cranking out?
That's a good question. I mean, they all look the same, so I wouldn't be surprised.
They
if
definitely
they're
have
the
like a vibe, but I don't know if you mind pulling up some.
I think they publish and develop.
Oh, okay. They do definitely all have the same look to them. I will say my first time with Wales Interactive was Late Shift, and have you played Late Shift?
No.
It's so good. You have to play it. It's legitimately good. Like good.
It's funny because I think between me, you, and Greg, we've all probably played one like different Wales Interactive because my game is the Complex that I played from them, and Greg played 5 Dates, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I can't remember if I played another one, but generally, if it's an FMV game, I'm down to check it out because there aren't a lot of them, and I think they can be really fun. But yeah, Late Shift's the only one that has like super hit, and obviously, other ones, the non-Wales, like Her Story, being one of the classics and stuff like that. But yeah, play Late Shift. Everyone who's listening to this, play Late Shift. It's really, really good, genuinely. I've introduced so many people to that game, and everyone that has played it has liked it so far.
Really?
So be the first person not to like it. Yes, it is good.
I don't believe you. If I'm being honest, I don't believe. I feel like you are saying this so that I play it and I get upset.
To dismiss. Why so quick to dismiss, Blessing?
Because it's Wales Interactive.
Have I led you wrong before? Actually, don't know if I have.
That's a good question. I want to say yes, but I can't recall. So maybe not.
Exactly. So
Maybe
I'm
not.
like undefeated.
No, it's gone the other way around. We've definitely led Janet wrong before.
We've led Janet astray.
That is true, and I always follow you down.
Have you finished Uncharted 4 yet?
I have not yet, but I will. I promise. I'm going to add to my GG app for what I'm playing, so I remember I'm playing it. But yes, I will always play the stuff that y'all tell me to play. So
I really want to play Bloodshore. Maybe if I play Bloodshore and I have a good time and I crave more, then I'll play.
But you're not going to have a good time. That's the thing. Like,
here's the thing.
I'm down to still play it.
You're telling me that Late Shift. You're telling me that Late Shift is good. Yes. And so maybe not everything they make is bad, because that's been my perception of them.
Okay, but that's the thing. Why am I getting penalized for like what Bloodshore might do? You know what I mean? Like Bloodshore takes that L, and now you're not playing Late Shift. Like play Late Shift.
Because
I don't know why I sound like Greg right now.
Bloodshore is my shit. Is the thing. Again, Bloodshore is an interactive action movie about a televised battle royale between high-profile streamers, entertainers, and death row inmates. That sounds like the greatest shit of all time.
That's fine. And if you're excited, I'm excited for you. Like let's do this, but don't make it so that Bloodshore has to succeed for you to play Late Shift, because they're not as related as you're trying to make them. Play Late Shift. Trust me on this. You're gonna like it. Does Late Shift
have the same janky look as like all their other FMV games?
Yes and no. Like I do think looking at Late Shift, which was my first entry into Wales, and then looking at their other games, I'm like, yeah, they look kind of similar. But I think it looks pretty good. Like it's good. It is good. Believe me when I say this game is good. Go play this game.
I like that this podcast now has a devotion to Wales Interactive. That's something that I would never have called. Because, like, anytime now that they announce or reveal one of their games, I'm like, I kind of want to check it out.
I'm always ready for Wales to burn me. Always.
Exactly.
Always at the ready.
Exactly. I'm going to check this out. But I don't know. Here's the thing, Janet, because we're going to make the transition. All right, we're going to transition to what you've been playing. And I saw on Twitter you talking mad shit about a game that's in a similar vein as these games that we're talking about here. Dark Pictures Anthology House of Ashes.
Let's get into it.
I've played most of this game, like 95% of it. How much have you played?
I'm more like that 50-60%.
And you are not feeling it.
Correct. Are you feeling this? Are you into this?
I love it.
Really? Why?
Yes. I think the characters and story in this one is better than the previous two, like by a large margin. I don't know if it's as good as Until Dawn. Greg Miller was tweeting about this one, and Greg Miller likes this game, Dark Pictures 3, House of Ashes, more than Until Dawn, which shocks me a little bit. But I do think that out of the 3 they've done so far, this is the one that is learned the most in terms of, hey, like like you like subtle UI stuff and subtle like how do we make this game flow between two people. I feel like they learned a lot based or coming off of the last 2 games. I feel like there's less standing around waiting for my co-op partner to like figure out like what they're doing, and like less of a like I think there's way better pacing in terms of what both of you are doing, and then the game filling you in on what the other person did. Like it seems like they've learned a lot in terms of that. And I feel like at any given moment in House of Ashes, like what me and my co-op partner are doing are like we're always kind of working separately, but like the conversations we're having about what we're doing always are kind of interesting. But I should preface and say like we should explain what this game is, like what the premise of it is. But also I should ask you, are you playing this game co-op or single player?
I'm playing co-op, but locally, so we don't play at the same time. It's past the controller.
Interesting.
And I've always played that way. Okay. But do you want to? How about you run down what Dark Pictures Anthology House of Ashes is, and then we can get into why I don't really like this game. Yeah. I'm still gonna finish it because again, I'm going down with the ship. Like Supermassive can take me anywhere, and I will follow them into the sun until further notice.
I'm with you there. So Dark Pictures, the first 2, Me and Madon and Little Hope. Well, Me and Madon, I thought was mid, and then Little Hope, I guess I also thought was mid. Right, mid is in like not terrible but not good.
Mid, like they're all different shades of mid, and this is the team that did Until Dawn for folks who maybe played that game.
Yeah, and like I think most people at this point know what Dark Pictures is, but for those who don't, right, it's basically an Until Dawn like game where it is a horror game, horror narrative based, choose your own adventure, butterfly effect. The choices you make will change the story. Anybody in the game that you control can live, anybody can die. It's that kind of thing. This one takes place. What country is this?
Dark Pictures, House of Ashes, like Iraq, right?
Is it Iraq? Like, okay, yeah, because it's the like Iraq War. Yeah. So it takes place in 2003, post 9/11. You are with an army unit essentially that is in Iraq. And I should point out one of the bigger aspects of this game is that Ashley Tisdale plays one of the main characters.
Yes, that is an important note.
I love, and it's probably one of the big reasons I love this game, because I love Ashley Tisdale. But you are essentially part of this military unit that is made up of like a bunch of different characters, and like things pop off pretty early in terms of you finding yourself in a location that has monsters in it. Like I don't want to say too much because I don't want to like spoil the story, let everybody experience it by themselves. But it's essentially another one of the Dark Pictures games. It has a similar tone, but I would say in tonally and in terms of setup, it's probably more similar to Until Dawn than any of the other ones. Maybe a bit Man of Madonna as well, just in terms of a group of people being stuck in a location that has creatures hunting them, essentially.
Yeah, I have like a totally different read on it, which is so interesting. I find this to be almost like the least like Until Dawn. I find it to be the least like any of their other entries in Dark Pictures. I think the number one reason that I say that, or the first thing that comes to mind, is the way it approaches horror is much more forward facing than their previous games. So a lot of their, again, without giving anything away, and just going based off like the marketing of the game and stuff, which still kind of gives some stuff away technically, right? But so much of it is about mystery and wondering. Now, and I haven't finished the game, so maybe they do end up doing a twist that makes it make more sense. But so much of their games are predicated on the fear of the unknown, of things are happening, people are disappearing, like there's stress, like I don't know, and then there's interpersonal drama. Like I would say it's the duality between the fear of the unknown and interpersonal drama among the cast members. Some of those interpersonal relationships are of the romantic nature, some aren't, and that's basically their shtick across Until Dawn and Dark Pictures. What makes this different and not sit well with me is the approach to horror is just drastically different. Like not even very long, because it's a very slow start to the game for anything to get scary at all. Once things get scary, it's very clear that like there's some kind of monster and or monsters here. And you already know that. You kind of see a lot of their form right away. There's not a lot of mystery in that sense. Again, maybe it gets more mysterious as I go on. I'm only halfway through. I also feel like they've done a weird amount of death fake outs where I think someone's dead and then they're fine. And that kind of makes it seem like what was my choice here? What's going on with that?
With that though, like I think it plays by the horror movie rule, which is if you don't see somebody fucking die, they're not dead. If they fall out of a pit, they're alive. If they get dragged someplace, they're alive. Like,
okay,
if you don't see them get fucking stabbed to death, they're alive.
I have a question for you though, really quick, because I was confused on this and I want to know what your take is. So a lot of the early gameplay and even like middle of the game gameplay is shooting, where it's like very much like quick time event shooting, where it's like drag the joystick over and then you hit like R2 or something if you play on PlayStation. But for those quick time events, are we supposed to have like a choice on whether or not we do something, or are we just supposed to do it? Because I found that kind of odd.
Well, that's actually one of the reasons why I like this one is because I feel like it plays so well off the previous two games. Because in the previous two games, there are scenarios where you don't want to shoot people. And like to reveal the exact situations would be a little bit spoilerish, but like if you are gun-ho of, hey, the game's giving you a quick time event, pull the trigger. If you do that every single time, you will fuck up. You will make a mistake. You will do something that you don't want to do. And so in this game, there is a lot of that. There is a lot of aim the gun and then pull the trigger to shoot. And I think the game kind of plays off of the idea that you've played the first two games, and so you're always kind of apprehensive to shoot. But like so far it seems like the game wants you to shoot at any given opportunity, but I also don't know based on my choices if that's just where I've led in my gameplay. But that quick time event specifically for the shooting is very easy to execute. And so like it's one of those ones where it's like, cool, I guess I'm just going with emotions here. But like, yeah, at any given point, it feels like a choice, but really I think it at the same time is just a regular quick time event.
Yeah, but I think that's my number one beef is that the how its approach to horror is not like quite as scary or spooky as the other ones have been. It's a lot more like, again, this is like kind of a spoiler, but like the way
it's like violent horror as opposed to
like it definitely, and it starts off very violent. I was like, Jesus, they're really going for it here. And then my other beef with it is just, I think the drama isn't spicy enough. Like, and it's funny because like I kind of grade them all the same score wise. So it's like, why does this matter? But like, again, to me, this is the more fun part, like digging into the conversation of what we like and don't like about these games. And there is some drama and they like set it up very like classically early on, but it doesn't feel like it becomes relevant enough. And it's not as spicy as like Until Dawn is like almost too spicy, right? Because it's like very, it's teen drama. So they kind of like really, really ham it up in a way that I think is a little bit cringy. And all their games are a little bit cringy, except for this one's the least cringy, but I think it also means it's the least interesting. I think they played it so safe. I think this is the most palatable game they've had. But for that reason, it's also the one that's the least fun for me. I feel like there aren't like the fluctuations of high and low enough, and they're just playing the mid, but it's like, I am kind of okay, and I've understood that Dark Pictures so far, all those games for me have been 6s and maybe even 5s, 7 at absolute best.
We need to have a spoiler cast because I want you to finish this game and I want you to come back to me because I think
can we do Dark Pictures in review?
That'd be awesome. I would love to do a Dark Pictures
Season
review.
1 ends after the next game comes out, but yeah, without like I had a very different feel, and also the camera's very zoomed in. Can you tell me why the camera's so zoomed in on whenever I'm in a given room? It is like I could not see, like you'll be in a room and it's like over the shoulder, third person, and like I'm so zoomed in I can barely even see the room that I'm walking in. Personally, like me and my brother really struggled with it, but yes, it is back and forth the way we play it.
To touch on what you mentioned a little bit earlier, I think the game does in like the first half into like maybe the first 60 to 70% play by the books in terms of, hey, this is what the story is, this is what you expect. I will say that I think the way the game digs into like the what's happening and like the actual details of what the horror is toward like the latter half of the game does feel a little bit more thoughtful than the last two Dark Pictures games. Like I'm curious
to see
the
real monster here. Is that the
No, I mean, I think that's like the first thing you learn in the game is like, oh, like we're all at war and we all got to put away our differences. That is the thing the game will drill into you over the course of playing, and I'm kind of tired of it. But I think that the game evolves in very interesting ways that I like a lot more than the first two Dark Pictures games, and in ways that I think are comparable to Until Dawn, a little bit more interesting than Until Dawn. And so I can't wait for you to finish this game, and I want you to text me immediately once you do.
Okay.
But also, in terms of the characters and drama, this game does feel, I think, more mature than the other games because, yeah, Until Dawn is very much, hey, these are teens in a cabin and they suck. Even Man of Medan and Little Hope, the characters suck. In this game, I surprisingly like the characters in this game. I think the characters are, and when they first introduce you to the characters, immediately you're like, these guys suck. As I've gotten to know the characters, I really like the characters. And like, there's one character that, and I think they do this in all their games on purpose. There's one character that I think you're meant to hate. There's one character that sucks and that like you can't wait to die. But even that character, they're over the top and ridiculous in a way where it's like, this guy is saying like racist shit. He's saying sexist shit.
Yeah, I know who this is. Oh, now I don't know who this is.
Oh, you know who this is.
This is like such a, like a lot of them are sexist. Like this is like a really interesting game.
But like this guy is very specifically like, at any chance you give him, he sucks.
Okay, and I think I know who you're talking about though. I think I know.
And he finds himself in a dilemma, I think a little bit like early on in the game. Like basically like in a situation you would not ever want to find yourself in, at least in my playthrough. Maybe in other playthroughs it's different. But it's one of those ones where I'm like, yeah, like fuck you, but also like I'm gonna save you because I'm a human being, but also like, yeah, you deserve this shit that you're going through right now. And I think the main characters between Ashley Tisdale, there's a character named Eric, and then there's like another character named Nick, and even Jason. Like all these characters introduced as such shitty characters. They're all on that bullshit. They all fucking suck. And I'll say 45, maybe 60% of the way through the game made me actually like care for these characters in a way that I just wasn't expecting. Even the shitheads, not the biggest shithead in the game, but there is like a shithead that's below that shithead that like I still ended up kind of liking this guy. Like Jason specifically is what I'm talking about.
Another like really quick thing, and we could talk about this forever. We just need to do a spoiler cast on it. But yeah, it's so interesting you saying like, oh, me and my online co-op partner, like I'm doing something and they're doing something. I'm like, what? You're both doing so it's when you do local, it's past the controller. And the way they set it up is you select your characters before you even start the game. Like, you know, you have 5 or 6 or however many there are. And it's like, okay, Janet picks one. Then my brother's name's Edwin. Edwin picks one, and then back and forth. And here's one of the flaws in that. And I struggle with like what they could really do to fix this, but it was kind of a rough go. For some reason, the way we picked it, when I tell you I played the first hour of this game by myself, like I had so much more playtime, and it just kept, and again, you can play with up to like 5 or 6 people, which I guess in that setting, it's a lot more fluid, but with just 2 people, they were like, Janet's turn, and I'd play for like 30 minutes, and then they're like, Janet's turn, and it's another character, and I'd see like the character that my brother selected, but like it wasn't their turn yet to like.
Wait, so you guys selected each of the characters yourself?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a sucky way to do it.
I wish there was maybe like a random. I wish there was an option to just like maybe they have some future games, but like share the game time or something, because at one time even they said Edwin's turn, and I swear to God he literally did nothing. Like it was a cutscene, and then they're like back to Janet, and he was like, and
that's a bad way to do it. They should find a way to automate that, because for me when I'm playing online co-op, it is like they have it set so that at every single point you and your co-op partner are playing different characters, and those scenes are going on at the same time.
Oh, that's so fun.
And the game is designed so that like those things are able to happen and you're getting the gist of the story, and it makes it even more interesting because there are things that my co-op partner is doing that like I'm playing with my friend Yami, right? Yami is like keeping secrets from me and like she's playing a character that is on the opposition, right? They're on the opposite side, right? Because it's war, and so there's 2 sides in war. It's like it's the Iraq War, and so like her character is basically on the side of the terrorists, and my character is on the side of the American military unit that's over there. And as we're going, like there are things that she's seeing, and she's like, oh, I'm not going to tell him this because this is going to affect his decisions. And so I'm just going to let him like naturally like discover that, oh, her character is actually one of these people. And it's like, it's really cool stuff, honestly. I think playing the game at the same time, online co-op is the way to go because like I'm surprised that it let you actually pick what characters you want to play as opposed to automatically assigning it, because there is a cadence to, all right, back and forth, you're this character, and you're going back and forth, and being able to choose what character you play, I think kind of takes away from that a lot.
That sounds so much more interesting of a setup than what we currently have. And I've played all of them like this. And yeah, I don't know. That's so fascinating. I'll be interested to hear like what Greg's doing with his playthrough and when we can maybe all talk about it. Because yeah, I definitely think that at the end of the day, the game is the game. And I think we just inherently have different takes on it. But at the same time, I wonder how much of that plays a role in the feel
for sure
of it, you know?
And I will say, like, my playthrough has gone super quick. I'm sure your playthrough is going to double in time compared to mine.
Yeah, we're like 3 or 4 hours in, and we're like halfway. 60%.
Yeah, and I need to check, but I'm probably like 2.5 hours in, and I think I'm in the
Oh
final
man,
chapter.
see, like we be out here like putting in the hours, like we just be like grinding through this thing. But even then, it's still like it's a 2-sitting game, so it's not too bad. But yeah. Anyway,
Cool. What else have you been playing?
I played a little bit of Kiwi. I'm actually not playing that on PlayStation, but it is on PlayStation. It's that we talked about this like a while ago, but that game where you can play as like two birds and you work in a post office. You can play it solo, but I am playing that with my boyfriend, and it's pretty fun. It's very much it's kind of in that Overcooked style, but instead of, having different dishes or like different, you have like maybe like 3 or 4 types of tasks to do. So one might be you're putting together letters, like someone's sending you like a voice kind of memo and you're making the little letter and mailing the letter. Another one is like sorting packages. Another one is like putting letters and then also funneling packages to different places. And the way they sort of diversify the gameplay is through changing up the additional environmental, obstacle you have. So an example is, you've done this room before, but now it's filled with sand, and if you step the wrong way, you'll sink. Or there's plants that are like carnivorous and can like scoop you up for a second, and you have to break free. So it's pretty fun. I'm enjoying it a lot. It's got some cute cosmetics, so definitely a fun, chill co-op game if you're looking for something to play with someone else that's adorable and a little bit more low key. And then I'm backing your port this to PlayStation for Inscription again. When I care about the people who are on this call, so when y'all recommend me a game, I try to at least spend some time with it. But we can't all be like that, I guess. I played Inscription. It's awesome. I love it. I can co-sign it as someone. If you don't like card games and or are a little bit lazy for reading the cards, and you're like a little bit spacey in some ways, that's a little bit me when I'm playing these kind of games. It is so dope. I'm having a really good time with it, and I'm actually finding the ease of getting through it to be like not too bad. Like it's not too difficult of a game, and I've been having a lot of fun like figuring out. One thing that surprised me that maybe you did talk about, but I missed it, is you have the card game and you're kind of going to the little map, but then you can also get up and do stuff around the room, which it feels awkward to control that, but I think the layers of the way those kind of two elements of the gameplay are in conversation with each other feels unique and fun. My only sadness is that this game isn't just on my iPad. If it was on my iPad, I would definitely run through the whole thing. But on PC, I'm a little bit less inclined to sit here on my off hours and play through it. But I'm really, really liking it a lot.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Yeah, like I love the escape room elements of that one.
What have you been playing?
Like I mentioned, Dark Pictures 3, and then Riders Republic I've been playing a lot. I'm gonna hold a lot of my impressions for Gamescast, and so tune in this week to hear me talk more in depth about it. But real quick, I do really love the game. I think the game is really fun and really good. I'm actually pleasantly surprised about it. I had high hopes for Riders Republic because upon reveal, I was like, this is my type of game, this is my type of shit, and they're actually hitting a lot of it in terms of the festival vibe of it, the different events, the open world. A lot of it feels very Forza, not in polish because like Forza is on another level of like polish and actual like this is a fucking intricate, dopely designed game. But I think Riders Republic gets a lot of that Forza energy in the Forza. Hey, I'm just gonna go from event to event and do these different type of careers. Like you have the downhill snowboarding and skiing. You have the flight stuff, which is your rocket suit and your wingsuit. You have the trick stuff. You have like downhill biking. And I'm finding that separately, I am liking so many of the different kinds of events in there. Like I think individually, they're all fun in their very own way, and it has a lot of the Ubisoft open world tendencies to it. It has like we gotta find a fun word for it, like the icon splash when you open up the map of okay, cool, I know what I'm doing here. I'm just going through and I'm checking these boxes. I'm clearing out all these icons, and it does the Forza thing where as soon as you finish one event, boom, you populate your map with even more events, and like you keep going in that way. And I'm just having a blast with it. I think the thing I like about it, even compared to something like a Forza historically, is that when you open up your map, you can go to whatever event that you want, and it'll fast travel you right to it. And I wish more games like that would do that, because it is so nice not having to worry about, oh man, I want to do this, but it's all the way on the other side of the map, and so let me just drive or fly or ride all the way over here. I think with that, it feels really player friendly in that way, and yeah, it just feels very fun. Like it's my type of game, just in the way that it feels like a combination of GTA Online and Skate. And Steep, but Steep wasn't really my shit. But like between those two things of GTA Online and Skate, it has that level of, hey, like you're just doing events and you are just like ranking up or leveling up, and a lot of the events are super wacky and there's player created stuff and all this shit that I think is really fun. My big complaint with the game is the microtransactions. And apparently this is a very Ubisoft thing, and I'm not super into Ubisoft games in general, and so I don't have to encounter it as often. But I was shocked and dismayed, Janet, when I went to the shop because I'd been playing the game for quite a while, and I was playing it on stream last night, and I was having a fantastic time, and I was like, oh shit, I'm not taking a look at the cosmetics. Let me check out the cosmetics. And there are two currencies in the game. And then I should also mention that this is I believe a full price game. There are two currencies in the game. One of them is a premium currency that you have to like buy with your real money. Then the other one is the in-game currency. And for the in-game currency, like a lot of the stuff is expensive, but it's fine, it's whatever. Like the thing that struck me as, oh, this really sucks, is that the in-game currency stuff, super basic. It's like, cool, do you want to spend a third or like 2/3 of your money on like a fucking basic ass sweatshirt? And I'm like, no, I don't really want to, but I would like this fucking skull helmet that you got. But you look at the skull helmet and you can only buy it with premium currency, like the
classic Ubisoft.
And that fucking sucks. Like, that was such a bummer.
Though, right? Or do they have like, they're just purely cosmetic though, at least, right? Or do they have an, okay.
Purely cosmetic. Just wait until, like, the in-game currency only goes to NFTs that you can buy throughout the game.
Oh god, for that. Oh my god, they can NFT the shit out of this game, by the way, if they wanted to. Like, there's a lot of different cosmetic stuff that you have, and if they really wanted to.
This company.
If they really wanted to, they could make it happen. It's such a bummer because there's not much for progression outside of, oh, you're unlocking more events and you're like slowly ranking up your careers, but like cosmetics would be the cherry on top. And the cosmetics that they offer with the in-game currencies are just lame. They're just whack. They're just not interesting. And I think they have daily and weekly rotations on the stuff, and so maybe for the rotations you'll eventually get dope stuff in there. But for where it's at right now, like last time I opened up the game, all the in-game currency stuff just seems so whack, and all of the premium currency stuff seems so cool. And if that premium currency stuff was the in-game currency stuff, oh my god, it'd be the cherry on top. I would absolutely love that. Like, I would grind for so many of the cool looking cosmetics in there, because they have like big like giraffe costumes that you can rock. They have like, again, like a skull helmet. They have like really cool designs for your gear and all this stuff, and you can't buy any of it with in-game cash. You gotta fork up the real money, and it's a bummer for me.
That sucks. I wish they at least, I think it's somewhat fair, again, like people want to make money, like to have the option for like in-game, like regular real world money for the nicer stuff, but I feel like there should still at least be a in-game like option, you know what I mean? Like maybe it's more expensive, like it's easier just to buy it, or you can just grind your way up to it, but to not even have the option kind of sucks.
It sucks too, because for all the in-game currency stuff, like you can use either currency. You can use the in-game or the premium.
But sure they then
then they have the stuff that is like just the premium, and it's like, come on, bro. Like, what if it was free to play? It would be a different thing. Like a free to play game, sure, why not? Like, I'm playing this for free anyway. Nickel and dime me all you want. For a full price game that like wants to be good and have good progression, all this stuff, trying to nickel and dime at that point, it's like, come on, man. Just make it free to play in that case. But yeah, that's what we've been playing. Janet, we got a couple more segments before you wrap this thing up, and so let's build the list, Shannon. Of course, building the list is our segment where we go through, we talk about the PlayStation downloadable games that we love. We build a list of 100 games to recommend to people, for people who are looking through the PlayStation Store for sales and all that stuff. We have 12 games on the list so far. We each bring a game. We ask the audience for games, and we go from there. We add them to the list. I'll start. I brought The Pathless to talk about, Janet. The Pathless was a game that came out for, it was a PS5 launch title. Very beautiful game, very awesome game. For me, it reminded me a lot of something like Shadow Colossus or Eco, mixed with some of the puzzles that you'd love from a Zelda, mixed with like some really cool open world traversal. You're playing... I can't remember the full story of this game, because now I feel like it's forever ago, even though it was only a year ago. And this is one of those games that is kind of cryptic in narrative. But I believe you're trying to bring life back to the land is essentially the whole thing of it. And to do that, you kind of have to go through and encounter these creatures and try to restore the creatures to their goodness, because they've been taken over by darkness and now they're trying to fight you. And like... the classic tale. And you go through, you like have to explore, you have to like find these towers, bring life to the towers, and all that involves puzzle solving and executing on traversal. And I think the game feels really fun to play. The game has a fantastic score. The game has a fantastic visual style. It's a game that I would recommend anybody play. And so The Pathless is my pick for the list. Shannon, what about you?
Yeah. I'm bringing Abzu to the table, but also like Double Shot to the Pathless. I really like that game a lot. I feel like not enough people played it. Really great like locomotion in that game. It just feels fun to like once you learn the movement of the arrows and the running and everything in the Pathless, it's fantastic. But for me, I got Abzu. It was developed by Giant Squid and published by 505, and it's an adventure game where you are a diver and you're going underwater. And again, another kind of cryptic narrative. It's sort of like a bit.
These are like two games that are like of the same ilk.
Yes, you just kind of sense it, you know. I would say Abzu's a little bit, I'd say a lot more chilled than the Pathless. Though the Pathless has very little combat as well outside of the boss battles. It's only boss battles or no combat. Abzu doesn't have any combat. You're just avoiding occasionally like some things. And it has a little bit of environmental puzzle solving as well, but the puzzles aren't usually quite that difficult. It's really more about just the experience of being underwater, and you can kind of scan things, and you can, there's like the sort of collectible or thing you can find is the meditation spots where you just sit and kind of look at the ocean. And it's so incredibly soothing. Another thing to note too is it's from the art director of Journey. I will say I played Journey way after the fact, and I liked some elements of it, but I wasn't like totally in love with it the way a lot of people talk about Journey. That being said,
me and you are cut from the same cloth. I was thinking about this.
This one really hit for me though.
I was thinking about, then maybe I should play Abzu. I was thinking about this earlier today, that like a year or so ago on Gamescast, we had our most controversial opinions episode. And I was thinking back to like how on that episode, I think I had mentioned that like I found Journey to be boring and like kind of whatever.
You're a monster.
Yeah. And like I remember saying that, and I was like, damn, I am a monster.
So if you said it about a AAA game, people were like, whoa, what's going on? But no, I kind of felt the same way. Like I think Journey had some really nice highs. Like I went to that game knowing almost nothing, and certain elements really surprised me and delighted me. And I think it's very beautiful, and there are moments that are quite moving. But holistically, it didn't light the fire that it did for a lot of people, because I didn't play at the time that it came out.
Yeah, I had the benefit of like I didn't have a PS3 when it came out, but my one of my best friends, Annie, who was like really like in the weeds of like the PlayStation community and stuff, had a PS3, and I was over at her house one day, and she was just like, sit on the couch, play this game, and that's all she told me. And yeah, and then I went through the motions of playing through that game and having the ups and downs that I think that everybody else is having. And it's still such when I think back to that first experience, that's what I think of when I think of Journey. And it makes me sad that other people, not everybody had that same journey with Journey.
The same journey with Journey. So the funny thing is, if you like Journey, play Abzu. And if you didn't like Journey, still play Abzu. And that's my Abzu recommendation. There's a few moments in that game, kind of similar to Journey, where I was just really taken aback by what I was seeing on screen, and it felt very moving, very calming. It's a fairly short game, so it's definitely one that you should play if you have not already.
I'll bring in the submissions from the audience. Emmett Watkins Jr. I'm bringing in 2 submissions because I want to build this list. All right, I want to get to that 100. Emmett Watkins Jr. writes in with a longer submission, but I'm going to read through it because Emmett Watkins Jr., you can write, you know how to write. And so I'm going to read that writing. Emmett writes, just wanted to add this game to the list. Risk of Rain 2. It's been brought up on the show before, I think, but for the uninitiated, it's basically one of the most pure arcade shooters of all time. It's a roguelite, third-person shooter, 4-player co-op optional, and the point of the game is to just go on for as long as you can. The game gets more difficult the longer you go for a run, but also collect more and more upgrades and new abilities as you play. The game seems pretty basic in early levels, but before you know it, you are stacked with dozens and dozens of traversal and combat abilities that make you feel like a god. Some of my best runs are when I've collected 4 extra jumps, my movement speed is tripled, and all my attacks explode and do lingering bleed and fire damage. It's some of the most fun I've had in any game, let alone indie. So I think it should certainly make this list. Also, it does play great on all platforms as well, including Switch. Emmett, it's been granted. I'm adding Risk of Rain 2 to the list. I'll also mention that this is one that reminds me a lot of Returnal. Like when Returnal was announced, I was like, oh, so it's like Risk of Rain 2. And so if you like Returnal, you'll probably like Risk of Rain 2 because it's a similar kind of roguelite experience. I'm also going to pull in a submission from Graham Reed, a.k.a. Graham of Legend, who writes in and says, Fez. And that's it.
Some good points made there. Absolutely.
Very good points made there.
Very good points made there. I don't think Fez needs an argument. Everybody knows Fez. Everybody loves Fez.
Blocks. It's a good time.
And so right now we got 16 on the list. The list is as follows. Superliminal, The Witness, A Short Hike, Undertale, Moonlighter, What Remains of Edith Finch, Disco Elysium Final Cut, Deadlight, Broken Age, Chicory, Disc Jam, Sound Shapes, The Pathless, Abzu, Risk of Rain 2, and Fez. It's a good list so far. Good job, everybody. We're killing it. Janet, before we go, where can people find your work?
You can find me across the internet under the handle @GameOnysus. And I do want to give God, do I have this pinned? I might not. If I don't, I'll pin it. I finally updated over on my website, Pen to Pixels, my top 10 games of the year. This is my third iteration of my top 10 list.
Whoa.
So go read that article if you have not already. I will repin it on my Twitter if I have yet to do that. And you can also follow @Pentapixels just directly on Twitter for access to that site.
Hell yeah. As a reminder, for hashtag PS I Love Photo Mode, we're still doing Death Stranding, so get those in with the hashtag PS I Love Photo Mode. Remember, this has been PS I Love You XOXO, your PlayStation podcast. Each and every week, we get together to talk about the hottest topics in PlayStation. We've got a Patreon post show for those that are subbed at the silver level of patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames. So stick around for that. Otherwise, until next time, peace out.